Chapter 113. The fifth round of the actual combat lesson. When the winner stepped on the loser's chest and made the loser vomit blood, Yang Mingjiang did not say that the opponent was cruel and merciless. The seventh round of the actual combat lesson. When the winner twisted the loser's arm and kicked him off the platform, Yang Mingjiang did not say that the opponent was cruel and merciless. The ninth round of the actual combat lesson. When the winner kicked the loser out of the field, causing the loser to faint on the spot, Yang Mingjiang also did not say that the opponent was cruel and merciless. The 12th round of the actual combat lesson. The freshman Li Tianlan versus the senior Mo Han. There was no humiliation or delay. When Li Tianlan beat the senior Mo Han out of the field with one punch, Yang Mingjiang unexpectedly attacked Li Tianlan. A thunderous strike. Not only did he seriously injure Li Tianlan in an instant, but he was also cruel and merciless. He put the hat of not caring about his classmates and deducted 5 credits from him at the same time. Strange red blood spurted from Li Tianlan's mouth. Yang Mingjiang's kick was not a full force, but it was really powerful. When Yang Mingjiang lifted his foot, Li Tianlan didn't even have time to react before he was kicked into the air. His body hit the 2 students in the front row hard, and the whole phalanx was suddenly in chaos. Yang Mingjiang's smile was cold and playful. His kick on a person in the chi-controlling realm could not heal his injury without a month or 2, unless he used credits to exchange for some precious recovery potions so that the time could be shortened. But in any case, no matter how terrifying Li Tianlan's potential was, some advantages would gradually shrink when he was injured. The actual combat lesson was held once every half a month, and he would be deducted 5 credits at one time. If he found a chance to kick him again, he would fall out of the class after 2 or 3 times at most. A student in an ordinary class could be killed easily by taking the opportunity of a maneuver. What was the big deal? Against Kunlun City, did you really think that Zhuang Huayang, an old headmaster who was about to retire, could save you? What a reckless thing. Bang! Li Tianlan's body finally fell to the ground. He closed his mouth tightly and swallowed his blood. For a while he could not even say a word. Senior brother? Wang Yuetong screamed. She squeezed through the crowd in front of her and rushed over. She subconsciously searched her body with one small hand. But the potion she carried had already been given to Li Tianlan a few days ago, and Li Tianlan fed it to Ning Qianqing. Now she had no potion on her. Li Tianlan held Wang Yuetong's palm. There seemed to be a lot of blood flowing fiercely between his chest and abdomen, and finally gushed up along his throat. The feeling was spicy and hot. He could only keep his mouth shut, endure the shock in his body, and try to calm down the power of Yang Mingjiang's kick. The entire scene was silent. No one looked at Yang Mingjiang, whose face was getting more and more playful. No one looked at Li Tianlan either. Everyone knew that Yang Mingjiang was a little unkind in this matter. It was obvious that he was targeting Li Tianlan, but the Sky Academy was obviously not a reasonable place. Moreover, Li Tianlan's combat capability just now also made every freshman feel a great threat. He was in the chi-controlling realm, but he could ignore the realm gap. Wouldn't it be more in their interests if such a person was targeted by Yang Mingjiang? So everyone was silent and looked on coldly. Even the 2 freshmen who had just been hit by Li Tianlan got up at once and stood back to their original positions, acting as if nothing had happened. Li Tianlan's face was pale, but his eyes were fixed on Yang Mingjiang. What? You're not convinced? Yang Mingjiang, who had been observing Li Tianlan's reaction, raised his eyebrows slightly and sneered. There was no change in Li Tianlan's eyes. It was not a kind of angry and resentful look, nor was there a panic in the face of absolute power. From his eyes, Yang Mingjiang could not even see the slightest emotional fluctuation. All he could see was darkness. It was as silent as the darkness of the eternal night. Li Tianlan swallowed the last mouthful of blood and gently patted the footprint on his chest. He laughed in a hoarse voice and said, "I'm not convinced." "What can you do if you're not convinced?" Yang Mingjiang said with a sinister smile, "This is my class and I have the final say. Don't think that you're great because you have wind and thunder veins. Before you grow up, you're nothing. If you want to live a little longer, you'd better behave." He glanced at the other students and said coldly, "I'll say the same to you. In my class you have to listen to me." He pointed at Li Tianlan and said with a grim smile, "Whoever is disobedient, he will be your example. Are you done?" Wang Yuetong, who was supporting Li Tianlan, suddenly asked in a calm tone. Yang Mingjiang was slightly stunned. It seemed that he did not expect that Wang Yuetong would speak before Li Tianlan spoke. He had to be polite to the little princess of the Wang family of Beihai no matter what. He took a serious look at Wang Yuetong and said with a chuckle, "Your Highness, do you have any different opinions?" Then he heard the 4 words that he had heard countless times in his life, and also the words that he never thought would come out of Wang Yuetong's mouth. *CKU. This was the first time in 19 years that Wang Yuetong swore. Her crisp and delicate voice echoed in the number 1 venue, and everyone was shocked. Yang Mingjiang's face changed. Before he could say anything, Wang Yuetong had attacked with all her strength. Her ruddy face suddenly turned pale, but her momentum skyrocketed. In an instant she went from the peak of the ice-condensing realm to the fire-flaming realm, the prying realm, the stabilization realm, and directly to the peak. In the dark world, there were a few drugs that could forcibly improve one's realm in the face of danger. Because Li Tianlan had entered the thunder-shocking realm before, he could barely improve to the realm that he had reached before. But in the entire dark world, only the Wang family of Beihai had unique skills that could temporarily improve one's realm. For hundreds of years, this top wealthy family, which focused on extreme outbursts of unique skills, had been crazy about improving combat effectiveness. One of their unique skills was almost universal in the 4 realms of martial arts, from the chi-controlling realm to the thunder-shocking realm. It could improve one's strength by a whole realm. Although it could not break the threshold of the invincible realm, it was terrifying enough. This unique skill was the same as Li Tianlan's forcible improvement of realm. It burned potential, and if used too often, it would affect the foundation. But at this moment, Wang Yuetong, who was extremely angry, did not hesitate to use it. The unique skill of the Wang family of Beihai, against the way of heaven. Go to hell. 2 flames appeared on both sides of Wang Yuetong. There was wind. The 2 flames rose instantly. An unprecedented cold killing intent kept blooming on Wang Yuetong. She suddenly screamed, and her clear voice echoed in the whole number 1 training ground in an instant. It was like the first cry of a phoenix, immature but still majestic. The 2 flames suddenly soared with the wind and rushed to Yang Mingjiang without reservation. A giant sword more than 10 meters long roared and condensed. The sword body was surrounded by flames, and it fell straight from the air dozens of meters high. The sword listens to the wind. The sword balances. The sword surges. The sword watches the fire. In an instant, Wang Yuetong raised all her combat effectiveness to the extreme. She released all her unique skills at the same time and threw them at Yang Mingjiang. The flames, the wind, and the giant sword gathered together in an instant. Wang Yuetong's body was full of strange phenomena, and there was a vague sense of sacredness and inviolability. A sharp and scorching aura seemed to bloom from nothingness. Wang Yuetong was not the only one who rushed to Yang Mingjiang. Li Baidian seemed to turn into a sword in an instant. Large flames flickered around him, appearing and disappearing from time to time. Li Baidian's sword intent was unprecedentedly condensed. He also attacked with all his strength without any reservation. At this moment, Li Baidian was the sword and the sword was Li Baidian. He and the sword became one. His body passed through the large light and shadow created by Wang Yuetong. He raised one hand and a dazzling sword light burst out instantly. It seemed to split the void, invisible and dangerous. The second style of Great Void Sword, unification of all swords. Ning Qianxing was almost neck to neck with Li Baidian. They rushed into the light curtain at the same time. Li Baidian's sword was extremely heavy. But Ning Qianxing's sword was extremely fast, like a beam of rainbow light. The flames in his hand rose, but they were still as cold as ice. The ice and fire formed a sword. In the blink of an eye, waves of sword chi roared and shot at Yang Mingjiang. Wang Yuetong attacked first, but it was Ning Qianxing who attacked Yang Mingjiang first. One of the 7 swords of Jade Pool. Aurora Glimpse Sword. Yu Qingyan's figure was 2 seconds slower. She, who had not really reached the peak of the ice-condensing realm, was undoubtedly the least noticeable. And her performance seemed to be very poor in actual combat experience. She staggered into the battle, stumbling. It seemed that she was more of a hindrance than a help. But in a place where no one noticed, one of Yu Qingyan's fingers had turned into a dazzling blood red. A drop of blood flowed from her fingertip and instantly seeped into her nail. Yi Huayu did not hesitate either. A long sword condensed from ice appeared behind her. She reached out to draw the sword. The sword suddenly rang out and went straight into the sky. In the crowd, Fan Haoyu had no time to hesitate. His fat body instantly knocked through the crowd in front of him. He clenched one hand into a fist. With a burst of dense cracking of joints, Fan Haoyu roared and punched Yang Mingjiang with a large piece of bright fire. A delicate short saber flew into the battlefield, followed by Du Hanyin. The saber light was dazzling in the large light and shadow, spinning wildly. Wang Yuetong broke out the limit of the peak of the fire-flaming realm, and Fan Haoyu. 2 were at the peak of the fire-flaming realm. Li Baidian and Ning Qianxing were both at the fire-flaming realm. And 3 were at the ice-condensing realm. 7 people, almost at the same time, attacked with all their strength and determination to kill. Yang Mingjiang, who was still waiting for Li Tianlan's reaction, changed his expression dramatically. He did not expect that by injuring Li Tianlan, he would poke such a big hornet's nest. Before Li Tianlan could fight back, so many people had jumped out to kill him. In a hurry, Yang Mingjiang only had time to set up a large piece of lightning in front of him. The giant sword in the air, surrounded by flames, crashed to the ground. Lightning, raging fire, sword intent, and ice light, everything intertwined and exploded in an instant. Large pieces of sparks and broken ice spread endlessly in the violent shock waves. Li Tianlan, who had just caught his breath, had no time to think. He got up and was about to rush to the battlefield. A strong arm suddenly grabbed Li Tianlan's arm. Li Tianlan suddenly looked back. In his sight, a handsome young man chuckled and said, "It's okay. Yang Mingjiang doesn't dare to kill them. But if you go up now, it's hard to say." He paused and continued with a smile, "I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Sumai." The light in the field finally dissipated. The violent shock waves swept through the crowd. Except for a few experts at the peak of the fire-flaming realm and the ice-condensing realm, everyone fell to the ground in disorder, struggling to get up. Whether standing or lying down, everyone's eyes were filled with a kind of extremely obvious complexity and fear, which was difficult to understand. In recent years, it seemed to be the first time that a student took the initiative to besiege a teacher in the Sky Academy. It was unimaginable how far-reaching the impact of this incident was. What happened today might become a legend for a long time. Everyone looked at Li Tianlan in a daze. Although Li Tianlan did not participate in this siege, it started because of him. Did this freshman, who was only in the chi-controlling realm, really have some magic? Li Tianlan wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and stared at the battlefield. After an extreme outburst, Wang Yuetong's aura was fluctuating violently. She seemed to be at the peak of the ice-condensing realm or the peak of the fire-flaming realm. Her state looked extremely unstable. Li Baidian and Ning Qianxing, on the other hand, had consumed too much energy. Their bodies, which used to be straight, were gradually hunched. Fan Haoyu, Du Hanin, and Yi Huayu all looked fine. Only Yu Qingyin's face was even paler than Wang Yuetong's. Her body trembled uncontrollably. She did not look like she was injured, but rather frightened. Yang Mingjiang, who was surrounded by everyone, was in a more difficult situation than anyone else. His camouflage uniform was almost completely torn, and a large part of his hair was burnt. Dark red blood flowed out of his mouth, and he coughed out large mouthfuls of blood. After a while, he barely managed to stand up. "I'll tell my father what happened here right away. I'd like to know whether the Sky Academy is the Special Warfare Academy of Zhongzhou State or the backyard of Kunlun City. I also want to know who gave you the courage to be so lawless and unscrupulous to target a freshman." Wang Yuetong's cold and indifferent voice sounded. Her tone was firm and cold. "Mount Shu also has the same question." Li Baidian sneered and said, "The Sky Academy is in a foul atmosphere. A stupid deputy director came out of the entrance maneuver and attacked a freshman. In the first class, you, a teacher leader of the actual combat course, also targeted a freshman. Everything is F***king done by Kunlun City. It's disgusting. Mount Shu would like to ask whether Gu Xingyun of Kunlun City is the god of war of Zhongzhou State who protects Zhongzhou State or the local emperor who acts like a tyrant in Zhongzhou State." Dongqing Clan and Jade Pool also have the same question. Kunlun City had better come up with a reasonable explanation in the high-level meeting. Not only Kunlun City, but also the Sky Academy should give us an explanation. If there's no explanation, I don't want to study in such an academy. I'd like to see how you, Yang Mingjiang, will behave after you deliberately suppress the freshmen because of your standpoint and Gu Yunxia's reputation of siding with the same party and eliminating the dissidents spreads throughout Zhongzhou State. I'll tell my family everything that happened today and then report it to the army headquarters. I can testify to everything that happened today on any occasion and guarantee the authenticity of every word I said." Fan Haoyu said with a poker face. "Ew." Yang Mingjiang spat out a mouthful of blood again. He stared at the group of freshmen in front of him and gnashed his teeth. "You owe my man an apology." Wang Yuetong said coldly, "Now you must give it back to him." Wang Yuetong, who called herself his woman for the first time, felt more and more proud in her heart, but she also felt a little distressed. Yang Mingjiang gritted his teeth and sneered, "What if I refuse? Then I'll kill you. A low and hoarse voice suddenly sounded. Yang Mingjiang's expression changed. Before he could speak, a black shadow appeared directly in front of him. The shadow raised its arm, and the air around its arm slightly vibrated. 100 meters away, the figure of tribulation appeared beside Zhuang Huayang. He crossed his hands slightly in front of his chest. With a click, 2 arm knives popped out of his sleeves, shining with cold light. At the same time, the shadow in front of Yang Mingjiang also stretched out 2 arm knives that were completely condensed from air. Since when does Sai City like to meddle in other people's business? If he doesn't apologize, I'll kill him. He forced the little princess of the Wang family of Beihai to burn her potential. I'd like to see if Gu Xingyun dares to ask for an explanation from His Majesty after I kill him. The enchantress's husky and sexy voice was full of coldness, and every word was as sharp as a blade. Wang Yuetong breathed a sigh of relief. Her extremely strong but rather unstable state fluctuated violently and quickly fell. Her face was still pale. She slowly walked to Li Tianlan and held his hand. Yang Mingjiang, who had just looked down upon the freshman, froze in place. His face turned red, but he did not speak. Everyone's body slightly relaxed. Only Yu Qingyan's body was still trembling slightly. Ning Qianqing looked distressed. He subconsciously walked over and whispered, "Qingyan, it's okay. Since you've chosen the Sky Academy, you'll encounter these things in the future. Are you afraid of blood?" Yu Qingyan's face was pale and she shook her head slightly. In fact, she was not particularly afraid of the swords and sabers in the dark world. It was just her first experience that made her feel that everything was different from what she had imagined. What no one knew was that just today, just now, she killed someone. This was the first time in her life that she had killed someone. Zhuang Huayang had already walked to the bottom of the platform with a group of high-level school officials. Tribulation. Gu Yunxia. The Enchantress. Yi Fengqing. Qing Ke. A group of high-level school officials surrounded Zhuang Huayang, waiting for his attitude. Zhuang Huayang smiled softly and said calmly, "This term Sky Academy is indeed a bit foul." Beside him, Gu Yunxia's face changed slightly, but she did not speak. This term Sky Academy was filled with too many games and power tricks when arranging the list of high-level school officials. Zhuang Huayang's words obviously meant something. However, Zhuang Huayang did not say much. As if he had said it casually, he directly set his eyes on Yang Mingjiang. "I don't want to know the process for the time being." Zhuang Huayang said indifferently, "Obviously you've incurred public anger. That's wrong, so you should apologize." "Headmaster, Li Tianlan is cruel and merciless." Yang Mingjiang opened his mouth subconsciously. "Teacher Yang." Gu Yunxia winked at him and said calmly, "What you did today was indeed inappropriate. You should apologize." Yang Mingjiang's body stiffened where he was. He looked at Tribulation, whose eyes were sharp and piercingly cold, and then at the Enchantress, who was full of hidden killing intent. He did not speak for a long time. "I'll count to 3. If you don't come here, I'll ask Sixth Sister to kill you." Wang Yuetong suddenly said coldly, 1. Gu Yunxia's face changed slightly, and she said in a slightly heavier tone, "Teacher Yang." Yang Mingjiang let out a bitter laugh. He felt blood gushing out of his throat again. He forcefully swallowed the blood in his mouth. Tasting the taste of blood in his mouth, he felt a sense of emptiness in his body. Even his legs felt weak. He walked with difficulty to Li Tianlan and said in a hoarse voice, "Li Tianlan, what I did just now was inappropriate. I apologize to you." Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes and smiled. Under the gaze of the higher-ups of the school, he suddenly lifted his leg and kicked Yang Mingjiang in the chest. In the same position. But the difference was that Li Tianlan used all his strength. Bang! Yang Mingjiang's body flew high. Whether by coincidence or on purpose, his body landed in front of Gu Yunxia at her feet. Chapter 114. No one expected that an ordinary actual combat lesson would turn into such a situation. Several of the most promising experts in the class besieged the tutor. The headmaster, the director of the teaching office, the director of the political department, and other senior officials were present at the same time. Yang Mingjiang, who was also a senior official of the school, apologized to a freshman in person. What was even more unexpected was that Yang Mingjiang actually rejected him and even kicked him in the same way that Yang Mingjiang did earlier. Although he was injured, the strength and speed of the wind and thunder veins were terrifying. Especially in terms of strength, Li Tianlan was in the chi-controlling realm, but his pure strength was not inferior to that of an expert in the fire-flaming realm. Yang Mingjiang had been seriously injured by the siege. Under Li Tianlan's kick, His body flew back nearly 20 meters and landed in front of Gu Yunxia, coughing up blood. For a moment he couldn't even move. "I don't accept it." His calm and gentle voice resounded throughout the entire venue, without the slightest bit of anger or pleasure, but everyone who heard this sentence felt their scalps go numb for no reason. This kid was really too strong-willed. Gu Yunxia's eyes flashed with viciousness and resentment. She squatted down slightly, helped Yang Mingjiang up, and handed him to the assistant beside her. When she straightened up again, she had a gentle and calm smile on her face. What Mr. Yang did today was really inappropriate. She paused, and her voice became softer and softer. She whispered, "The school will discuss a punishment decision as soon as possible. I don't know if you are satisfied with this explanation, Tianlan?" "I'm not satisfied," Li Tianlan said with a smile. He barely suppressed his injury and moved his body. There was suddenly a strong fighting will like a raging fire in his pupils. "What do you want, Tianlan?" Gu Yunxia narrowed her eyes and said in a feminine tone, but her fingers unconsciously contracted. This was her almost instinctive action every time she wanted to kill someone. Today's matter involved the Wang family of Beihai, Mount Shu and Jade Pool, and the academics in Sai City. This seemed to be a small matter, but if it was not handled well, it would become extremely troublesome. Therefore, Gu Yunxia had made up her mind to compromise for the time being. After this matter was over, she still had ways to deal with Li Tianlan. "I just said I'm not satisfied. What can I do?" Li Tianlan chuckled and said, "There are some things that you can't do without strength no matter how unwilling you are. Director Gu, am I right?" He calmly glanced around and continued, "That's why I just want to continue my lessons. However, there's no need to trouble Teacher Yang to name names. Since it's an actual combat class that can strengthen one's combat strength and allow one to get to know one another better, then let's be more straightforward. Among the freshmen there are a few that I want to challenge, so I hope that the teachers can fulfill my wish." Gu Yunxia's expression changed slightly, and she subconsciously glanced in the direction of Gu Yulan. Her soft eyes gradually turned cold, and there was a hint of threat in her eyes. Li Tianlan's smile was gentle like a breeze, but there was a hint of undisguised killing intent in his eyes when he looked at Gu Yunxia. Their gazes collided in the air, and it was a tit-for-tat. In the gloomy sky, the atmosphere suddenly became bleak. "Tianlan, do you insist?" Gu Yunxia asked slowly. Her words could be interpreted as a threat, but they could also be interpreted as her last warning. Li Tianlan stopped talking nonsense. He held Wang Yuedong's hand and walked back to the platform step by step with firm steps. "Tianlan, you're injured." Zhuang Huayang frowned slightly. He didn't know how serious Li Tianlan's injury was, but in this case, since he was injured, it was better not to fight. He could vent his anger at any time. "It's okay," Li Tianlan said without looking back. Gu Yunxia glanced at Li Tianlan coldly, then looked at Zhuang Huayang and said softly, "Please make a decision, headmaster." "I agree." Before Zhuang Huayang could speak, the enchantress made her attitude clear. "I have no objection either." Yi Fengqing looked at Li Tianlan's figure on the platform with interest, and the appreciation in his eyes grew stronger. Zhuang Huayang glanced at Tribulation beside him, intentionally or unintentionally. Tribulation didn't say a word. His figure gradually became distorted and illusory. A black shadow appeared in front of Zhuang Huayang, but he himself had already left the number 1 training ground. Was this a tacit agreement? Zhuang Huayang narrowed his eyes and nodded. "That's it. Tianlan, who do you want to challenge?" Li Tianlan had already stepped onto the platform. On the 3-meter-high platform in the gloomy sky, Li Tianlan's figure seemed very small, but it was extremely clearly reflected in everyone's sight. Li Tianlan pointed in a direction. In the direction he pointed, most of the freshmen he pointed at scattered instinctively, and a small group close together appeared in everyone's sight. In the crowd, Gu Yulan stared at Li Tianlan's finger pointing at her. She pursed her red lips and said nothing, but her eyes were full of killing intent. Lu Dongyu, who was also pointed at, remained calm. Su Yunzong, the most irascible one, suddenly clenched his fist and said in a ferocious tone, "I'll go and meet him." "Stop." Gu Yulan said in a flat tone, "Of course you'll go, but not now." Her eyes turned slightly and finally stopped on several ice-condensing realm experts on the periphery. She said in a soft and sweet voice, "You guys go up. Don't rush to finish the fight quickly. Drag him with all your might and consume his strength." Several ice-condensing realm experts from the flames of war looked pale. They looked at each other and subconsciously looked at Lu Dongyu. "Go," Lu Dongyu said with a dull face. the one being challenged, come up. Zhuang Huayang's voice sounded. As a headmaster, he personally presided over an actual combat lesson. This lesson was of a high standard. An ice-condensing realm expert stepped forward. His face was pale. Standing in front of Li Tianlan, he opened his mouth and said slowly, "My name is..." Before he finished his words, Li Tianlan's figure had directly appeared in front of him. He punched. The human emperor did not show up. Li Tianlan's joints all over his body shook wildly. He concentrated all his strength into one punch and hit the opponent's chest hard. On the platform, all the air shook violently and then twisted wildly. In the gloomy and cold air, there seemed to be a sudden wind, fierce and overbearing. The ice-condensing realm expert who had just stepped onto the platform suddenly changed his expression. He subconsciously crossed his hands in front of his chest. Li Tianlan's punch came across the air. Cruel and merciless? A trace of ferocity flashed in his eyes. Endless hostility filled his heart and spread all over his body. I'll show you what is really cruel and merciless. Bang. The crazy power went through his arms and hit his chest. On the platform, which was covered by the twisted air and looked a little fuzzy, a low but dull and desperate scream accompanied by the sound of bones breaking rang out. The ice-condensing realm expert from the Flames of War had just stepped onto the platform and was blown off the platform like a sandbag. The punch hit his chest through his arms, but a lot of blood burst out of his back. The lonely and desperate figure crossed the platform and fell heavily in front of Gu Yunxia. He twitched twice and then stopped moving. Next, Li Tianlan said calmly. Gu Yunxia finally could not keep the smile on her face. Her expression became extremely gloomy. An ice-condensing realm expert was nothing in Kunlun City. But the Flames of War, whether in the Sky Academy or in Kunlun City, was a force of Kunlun City. Li Tianlan deliberately punched an elite of the Flames of War in front of him. Gu Yunxia felt as if someone had slapped her in the face. It was a burning pain. She squatted down and checked the injury of the injured person. She suddenly raised her head, and her eyes seemed to be spewing fire. Under the punch, all the bones of the student in front of her had been completely broken, and his internal organs were almost completely destroyed. With such an injury, he would not die as long as he was treated in time. But it would be extremely difficult for him to recover. Li Tianlan did not kill anyone in the actual combat lesson. But what was the difference between such a method and killing him? Cruel and merciless, Gu Yunxia thought of Yang Mingjiang's comment. She gritted her teeth and said nothing. Bang! On the platform, Li Tianlan moved like a dragon. The second elite of the Flames of War had just stood firm when Li Tianlan kicked him in the abdomen again. A lot of blood burst out of his body like a blood mist. His body fell down the platform along the same trajectory and fell beside Gu Yunxia again. Headmaster. Seeing all this with his own eyes, Yang Mingjiang's lips trembled, and stars flashed before his eyes. There was no doubt that this was Li Tianlan's most powerful counterattack to his words of being cruel and merciless. Li Tianlan only broke his opponent's arm with one punch in the first battle. How was that cruel and merciless? In front of him, he only used one move to completely destroy his opponent in one move. Such a style was really cruel and merciless. Go on. Li Tianlan said softly with a mellow and gentle smile. Headmaster, look at what he is doing. These are all elites of our Kunlun City, no, the Sky Academy. Headmaster, this guy should be killed. Yang Mingjiang shouted in a trembling voice. Because of extreme anger, his dark face had turned blood red. All your Kunlun City? Did he finally let it slip? Zhuang Huayang's eyes turned cold. He took a deep look at Yang Mingjiang and said casually, Tianlan, be careful. Li Tianlan nodded and smiled, but in his mind he thought of Lu Xiaowei who had died in his hands, Yang Mingjiang's kick just now, and Kunlun City. It was an organization that took it for granted to bully others and said that the other party should be killed when being bullied. What a great power center of the special warfare system of Zhongzhou State. Li Tianlan smiled and looked at his opponent who walked to the high platform with an uneasy face. His figure flashed and he kicked again. Bang! The same bloody mist broke out in the sky. But this time the opponent did not fly out of the high platform. Li Tianlan's foot fell on him, and all the power exploded in his body in an instant. There was a thud. His body fell to the ground and he died on the spot. Li Tianlan looked at Yang Mingjiang with a playful look in his eyes. It was a look that Yang Mingjiang was very familiar with. Just now he looked at Li Tianlan with this kind of look, provocative and cruel. Yang Mingjiang spat out another mouthful of blood and was on the verge of collapse. Li Tianlan kicked the body in front of him off the high platform and continued, Who else? The corner of Gu Yunxia's mouth moved. She forced herself to swallow the blood that gushed out of her throat, turned silently and said coldly, "Let's go." With the support of the headmaster, Li Tianlan was unscrupulous. Gu Yunxia didn't want to see what would happen next. She turned around, asked her assistant to support Yang Mingjiang and left directly. Director Gu. On the high platform, Li Tianlan suddenly spoke in a flat voice. Gu Yunxia suddenly turned around, and her killing intent soared. She said coldly, "What's the matter?" "Nothing." Li Tianlan burst out laughing and said in a clear and bright voice, "Have I ever told you that you're so ugly just like an old witch? Young and vigorous, young and frivolous." Ah! Beside Zhuang Huayang, a burst of laughter suddenly sounded. Yi Fengqing looked at Li Tianlan with appreciation and said, "Well said, Tianlan. Based on what you said, when your injury is healed, I must drink with you." Yi Fengqing was called a madman in Yuzhou. He was arrogant and unruly. If it weren't for his fearlessness, he wouldn't have come to the Sky Academy to be a director of the political department. This position seemed to be prominent, but compared with the power of the Yi family, it was almost equivalent to being sent to the frontier. Gu Yunxia stood there stiffly. After 5 minutes she took a deep look at Li Tianlan, turned around and left. Li Tianlan glanced at his back, then turned around and asked Gu Yulan, "Who else?" "I'll do it." Su Yunzong suddenly roared. Ignoring Gu Yulan's eyes, he stepped toward the high platform step by step. Flames rose from his body. At this moment Su Yunzong was like a sun, scorching and cruel. He stepped onto the high platform. Without a word, he roared and rushed directly to Li Tianlan. He completely condensed the innate divine power given to him by the thunder vein. In the flames, the whole high platform shook wildly as he sprinted. He moved faster and faster like a giant beast. The air in front of Li Tianlan was completely twisted. In a trance, he seemed to be pushing a side of the world forward. He controlled the air to form the wind. The wind suddenly rose. The flames were blown away by the wind. The two approached each other in an instant. What appeared in front of Su Yunzong was also a tightly clenched iron fist. Su Yunzong roared and raised his hand to meet the fist without hesitation. Crack! Their fists retracted as soon as they touched. Li Tianlan suddenly took a step forward. The twisted air whistled wildly around him. Li Tianlan took the opportunity to turn around and hit Su Yunzong's chest hard with his elbow. Bang! Su Yunzong suffered a heavy blow, but he refused to retreat. The air around him had turned into blades of wind. In an instant, his burly body was covered in blood. But the expression on his face grew more and more ferocious. He grabbed Li Tianlan's arm and roared. With a furious roar, he swung Li Tianlan's body up and flung him hard. Boom! Li Tianlan's body rubbed against the ground, leaving a shocking trail of blood. He hit the iron railings around the high platform. The railings, which were surrounded by thick and long steel bars, were instantly deformed. Li Tianlan spat out a mouthful of blood, but he continued to rush forward without hesitation. Su Yunzong, who was also covered in blood, held a flaming long saber in his hand. The flames around him bloomed to the extreme, and he slashed at Li Tianlan. 3 elements final hit. It was the core unique skill of Kunlun City, the 10 skills of true martial arts. The 10th skill was known as the strongest in the invincible realm, and the other 9 skills were also outstanding in each realm. The human emperor in Li Tianlan's hand stretched out. In the silver flowing light, he held a long spear. The spear smashed hard on the ground. Boom! The 3-meter high platform, which was extremely solid with a large number of steel bars and concrete, suddenly shook. On the floor, countless dust and gravel mixed with steel bars flew out and hit Su Yunzong. Su Yunzong waved his saber wildly, destroying everything. Li Tianlan, who was faster than him, took advantage of the length of the weapon and stabbed his spear directly at Su Yunzong's chest. The sound was ear-piercing. Li Tianlan's figure seemed to have completely melted into the air, blurring. Only the silver spear shone brightly and moved forward. Su Yunzong could only retreat. One advanced and the other retreated. The distance of more than 10 meters was covered in a flash. Su Yunzong's huge body hit the railings on the edge of the high platform, and his whole body turned quickly against the railings. The silver spear stabbed into the gap between the railings. Before Su Yunzong could fight back, Li Tianlan's silver spear suddenly rose. Bang! Under the huge force, the silver spear directly smashed the steel railings. Dust flew up from the edge of the high platform, and all the steel bars were broken into countless pieces in an instant, shooting off the platform. Fierce and violent. A chi-controlling realm martial artist fighting against a fire-flaming realm martial artist. Li Tianlan's eyes were dark, and he seemed to have gone completely crazy. The silver spear whistled and danced in the flames and twisted air. The whole high platform was in danger in the battle between the two. Su Yunzong, who was dodging in a panic, looked furious. The long saber in his hand disappeared, and in an instant the flames scattered. The fourth move of the 10 skills of true martial arts. 4 moves to 1. Watch out. Under the platform, Gu Yulan, who was supposed to be full of confidence, suddenly narrowed her eyes and gave a warning. In a place that no one noticed, a figure that was exactly the same as Li Tianlan suddenly appeared behind Su Yunzong. It was a vivid imitation of Li Tianlan. The flames of 4 moves to 1 gathered in front of Su Yunzong and instantly surrounded Li Tianlan. The air in front of him fluctuated slightly. Li Tianlan stood quietly motionless. But in everyone's sight, Li Tianlan had already switched places with the shadow. He raised his spear and whistled down. The shadow in front of Su Yunzong was swallowed by the flames and instantly disappeared. The silver spear whistled all over the sky and hit Su Yunzong's head without reservation. Boom! The high platform, which was on the verge of collapse, collapsed with a loud bang in the last shot. In the smoke and snow mist, Su Yunzong's body completely collapsed under the spear. Only flesh and blood flew all over the sky and he died without a whole body. Cruel and ruthless. When the extreme violence was deduced to the extreme, it was an art that was enough to make everyone's scalp numb and heart tremble. An art that was cruel and bloody to the extreme. The smoke and dust drifted. In the ruins of the high platform, only Li Tianlan's voice continued to ring. Who else? On this day, in the first actual combat lesson since the beginning of the Sky Academy, Yang Mingjiang, the tutor of the actual combat lesson, was seriously injured. 2 people died and 2 were seriously injured in the class. 4 people were removed from the class. The flames of war, which had been awe-inspiring in the Sky Academy last time, was almost gone. In Li Tianlan's seemingly calm but insolent momentum was close to baring his fangs and brandishing his claws. Su Yunzong, a fire-flaming realm expert and a young core disciple of Kunlun City, died. Gu Yulan. Chapter 115. Su Yunzong died in the battle. The flames of war was almost removed from the Sky Academy. Now that things had escalated to this point, the actual combat class that was halfway through was naturally left unsettled. After the bodies and the wounded were carried away, Zhuang Huayang dismissed the team and personally sent Li Tianlan back to the dormitory. He was not afraid that Gu Yunxia and others would attack Li Tianlan. He did this to express his attitude to the whole academy. Li Tianlan's face grew paler, but after restraining his killing intent, his aura had completely stabilized. The benefits brought to him by that set of immortality potion were almost unimaginable. As soon as the injury broke out in his body, the vitality locked by the longevity lock in his body began to surge and break through the blockage, quickly healing his injury. After the fierce battle, although his injury could not be said to be completely healed, it was basically not a big problem. His body, which originally needed a month to recuperate, now seemed to be completely better in a week at most. Even Li Tianlan himself was a little stunned by such an effect. The most precious treasure of the Wang family of Beihai was just like their unique skill. Its effect could be said to be against the natural order. In contrast, Wang Yuedong's state could be said to be the worst. Although the process of upgrading from the peak of the ice-condensing realm was very short, her consumption was unimaginable. The so-called consumption of potential was temporarily unfathomable, but the consumption of physical strength and spirit was extremely obvious. As soon as she returned to the dormitory, she put her arms around Li Tianlan's waist, muttered that she was sleepy, and then directly closed her eyes behind Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan found it funny but also felt distressed. He could borrow the power of the ice-condensing realm or even the fire-flaming realm when he was in the chi-controlling realm because he had reached that realm before. But Wang Yuetong did not recultivate. Her improvement was completely using the combat strength that should not have belonged to her. In doing so, she needed to pay a much higher price than Li Tianlan. Now Wang Yuetong was almost in a state of half coma and half sleep, and no one knew how long she would rest this time. He carefully carried Wang Yuetong into the bedroom, put her body on the bed and carefully covered her with the quilt. Wang Yuetong, who was out of Li Tianlan's arms, seemed to move a little uneasily. Her little hands subconsciously grasped the quilt, and she slowly calmed down. Appreciating the little princess's quiet and delicate sleeping posture, Li Tianlan's heart was filled with tenderness. He lowered his head and kissed Wang Yuetong's face gently. Then he straightened up and walked out of the bedroom. In the living room, Li Baidian was standing beside Zhuang Huayang and bragging. Li Tianlan didn't know what he had said before. When he came out, Li Baidian was already halfway through his speech. I was by Tianlan's side at that time. Headmaster, you didn't see it at that time. Tianlan just raised the brush and waved it. Did you see that? The 3 words East Emperor Palace were written in one go. The whole living room was filled with sword energy, including the floor, the walls, and the furniture. They couldn't even withstand a single blow. Let me tell you. Cough. Li Tianlan couldn't bear it anymore. He coughed and interrupted Li Baidian's serious bragging. It was fine if Li Baidian exaggerated a little occasionally. But Li Baidian didn't know him. He wrote the 3 words East Emperor Palace for nearly a day, but Li Baidian wrote it in one go. It was outrageous. However, Zhuang Huayang didn't seem to pay attention to what Li Baidian said. He just looked at the wall covered with sword marks with a calm expression. The sword marks filled with pure sword essence were like a beautiful painting in his eyes. It was so beautiful that it fascinated him. Did you do it? Zhuang Huayang glanced at Li Tianlan, who walked out of the bedroom, and said with a smile. Li Tianlan braced himself and said calmly, I'm going to talk to the headmaster about this. These furniture need to be changed. I still have credits here. It should be enough to deduct. Okay. Zhuang Huayang thought for a while and said slowly, I won't deduct credits. The college will help you change the furniture, but I hope the wall will remain the same. These sword marks just stay here. Li Tianlan was stunned and looked at Zhuang Huayang. Zhuang Huayang didn't look at Li Tianlan but still looked at the countless sword marks on the wall. He said softly, This is a treasure, Tianlan. The sword energy left here may disappear soon, but the pure sword intent will always exist. After you graduate, if someone lives in your dormitory and looks at these sword marks, they can almost be said to be your students if they become successful in the future. Just leave the wall like this. The Sky Academy also needs such a special dormitory. Li Tianlan nodded casually. He was not interested in being a student for the time being. With his current realm at the peak of the Qi-controlling realm, he was really not qualified to be someone else's teacher. The sword intent on the surrounding walls was pure, but it wouldn't reveal the unique skills of the Li family. Since he could keep it without deducting credits, he naturally wouldn't have any objection. Zhuang Huayang's eyes fell on the plaque in front of him again. He stared at the 3 words that even stung his eyes when he first saw them. He said softly, East Emperor Palace. Is this the name of your team? Li Tianlan said yes. Suddenly, he thought of something and asked calmly, Headmaster, is there anything wrong with this name? No, it's good. Zhuang Huayang smiled and said, It sounds a little bold. Li Tianlan looked at his expression seriously. He asked again, Headmaster, haven't you heard of the name East Emperor? Zhuang Huayang looked at Li Tianlan with a smile. When he saw Li Tianlan's serious face, he suddenly froze. I haven't heard of it. Zhuang Huayang shook his head and said, I know a mythical figure called East Emperor Tai. What? Do you mean this East Emperor has a background? How can the heavenly son of Zhongzhou State in recent decades have no background? Li Tianlan said flatly, his name is Dongqing Huangtu. He didn't know why he was so attached to this name. Every time he thought of this name with infinite contradictions and mysteries, he would subconsciously figure it out. Maybe it was because of the notebook in Qin Weibai's hand. Or maybe, it was because of Qin Weibai's sad and helpless eyes when she mentioned this name. Heavenly Son? Zhuang Huayang raised his eyebrows in surprise. He took a deep look at Li Tianlan and said slowly, How can there be any heavenly son in recent decades? This word is not used casually. Even if others use this word, they will add some modifiers in front of it. For example, Wang Xingxiao and Gu Hanshan are known as young heavenly sons. The word young is the most important. This generation's Wang Xingxiao, the previous generation's tribulation, and the previous generation's Wang Tianzong can only be regarded as people with the potential to become heavenly sons. For hundreds of years, only the ancestor of the Wang family of Beihai can be called a heavenly son. Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes slightly. His eyes were complicated, but he still didn't give up and asked, Headmaster, haven't you heard of Dongqing Huangtu? Sounds like a member of the Dongqing family? Zhuang Huayang looked at Li Tianlan strangely and said, I haven't heard of him. Li Tianlan was silent. Zhuang Huayang was an old fox at his age. What he thought and even the emotions on the surface were not what he could figure out now. He couldn't tell whether Zhuang Huayang was telling the truth or not. If what he said wasn't true, then what kind of secret was hidden behind the name Dongqing Huangtu that people like Zhuang Huayang still didn't want to talk about it after so many years after his death? A dignified heaven's chosen one, yet he was unknown. How ironic was that? But if what he said was true, what did that mean? Zhuang Huayang, who was nearly 70 years old, was a general of Zhongzhou state, but he hadn't even heard of Dongqing Huangtu's name. That was the truth. That could only mean one thing. Dongqing Huangtu didn't exist. Tianlan? Zhuang Huayang frowned and asked, "Are you all right?" "I'm fine." Li Tianlan shook his head, feeling complicated. "It's good that you're fine. Take care of yourself. I suggest you take some Chinese medicine. As for gene potions like healing, you can only use them for emergencies. Take as little as you can." Zhuang Huayang glanced at Li Tianlan and said, "I'm going to Yuzhou soon. Let's talk about other things when I come back." Li Tianlan's eyes narrowed. Zhuang Huayang going to Yuzhou? At this time it was most likely that he went to Yuzhou for the murder of Gu Changjiang. An expert at the level of governor was killed in his own country, which was enough to cause a sensation in the whole Zhongzhou state. So even if he knew that Zhuang Huayang had nothing to do with this trip, Li Tianlan still felt a little nervous subconsciously. "I'm fine." Zhuang Huayang shook his head and said with a light smile. Li Tianlan nodded slightly and didn't say much. Zhuang Huayang turned around and was about to leave. He glanced around casually and happened to see Yu Qingyan standing in the corner. Yu Qingyan's pretty face was pale, and she still stood there in a daze as if she was lost in thought. "Qingyan, are you all right?" Zhuang Huayang asked with concern. He and Yu Donglai were old friends for many years. Now that Yu Donglai handed his granddaughter to him, he must fulfill his responsibility. "I'm fine." Yu Qingyan became alert, shook her head in a panic and stammered, I'm going to call Grandpa." She turned around and trotted straight to the bedroom. Zhuang Huayang smiled thoughtfully and left quickly. In the bedroom, Yu Qingyan sat on the bed, holding the phone nervously, waiting for the call to be connected. The phone rang twice. Yu Donglai's kind and soft voice sounded, which made Yu Qingyan calm down. "Qingyan? What's wrong? You just left and you miss Grandpa?" "Grandpa." Yu Qingyan's inner nervousness gradually disappeared. But she still stammered. "What's wrong? Did someone bully you? Where's Tianlan? Give him the phone." Yu Qingyan suddenly became nervous. He loved this precious granddaughter from the bottom of his heart and was afraid that she would be wronged. If he didn't spoil her, Yu Qingyan might have a different character today. No. Yu Qingyan took a deep breath and said softly, "Grandpa Yang Mingjiang bullied Brother Li. In the class just now, Sister Yuatong led us to seriously injure Yang Mingjiang." At the other end of the phone, Yu Donglai's breath paused and he said softly, And then, Yu Qingyan hesitated, lowered her voice again and said in a trembling voice, "And then I used a drop of cardinal blood." The other end of the phone suddenly fell into a dead silence. Cardinal. This was something that only he and Yu Qingyan knew. Over the years, Yu Donglai had spent more time and energy on the linnet than on Yu Qingyan. In 20 years, the linnet had taken shape. If it evolved once with external forces, it would become a vermilion bird. This was the most poisonous thing in the world. Its toxicity was as fierce as raging fire and could be called unparalleled in the world. A drop of cardinal blood. Yu Donglai pondered for a long time before he took a deep breath and said gently, "It's okay. Qingyan, you did the right thing. Don't worry." His voice was still old and tired, but this time, there was a hint of pride in it. Yu Qingyan nodded her little head hard and said yes. "Bastard, this bastard, I must kill him, kill him." In the director's office, Gu Yunxia's assistant helped Yang Mingjiang to sit on the sofa. Yang Mingjiang, who had been silent all the way, finally couldn't help but roar angrily after entering the office. Gu Yunxia stood in front of the window and took a deep breath before she slowly turned around and sighed. "Mingjiang, this time we were careless. Who could have thought that Wang Yuatong, Li Beidian, and Ning Chenqing would risk their lives for that guy? It seems that their relationship is not simple. Wang Yuatong fell in love with him in just a few days. This is the most unexpected thing." Yang Mingjiang pulled out a cigarette, lit it and took a big puff. The smoke entered his lungs. Yang Mingjiang was so angry that he only felt a burning heat all over his body. He shook his head in annoyance and did not speak. "Let's find another chance later. This time we can't just let it go, but we have to pay attention to the way in the future." Gu Yunxia pondered and said word by word, "Outside the Sky Academy that guy is a non-entity. But at least in the academy he has now become a figure that can't be ignored. We can't continue to fight on a small scale. Next time we take action we must be clean and neat and don't leave any evidence." Yang Mingjiang took a big puff of the cigarette and nodded. The burning feeling on his body was getting stronger and stronger. In the blink of an eye he was sweating all over. Gu Yunxia, who knew his bad temper, only thought that he was angry and didn't think much about it. She took out her mobile phone and said with a smile, "Take a seat first. I'll go to the lounge to call the governor." Yang Mingjiang nodded and watched Gu Yunxia's back disappear. He lit another cigarette. The heat spread from the soles of his feet and kept rising, surpassing his chest and abdomen. The rolling heat waves rushed straight to his brain. Yang Mingjiang even felt that his body was on fire. He put out the cigarette, looked at Gu Yunxia's assistant and frowned. "Do you have water?" "I want ice." "Yes," the assistant said in a soft voice. She was also a freshman who graduated from the Sky Academy. In that year she was also a famous beauty. After graduating and staying at the school, she followed Gu Yunxia and naturally became a bargaining chip for Gu Yunxia to win over some of her confidants. Not only Yang Mingjiang, but even many promising ordinary male teachers had tasted her. "There's a refrigerator in the lounge. I'll get you some water." The assistant smiled charmingly and turned to the lounge. "This slut." Yang Mingjiang stared at the assistant's swaying soft buttocks with fiery eyes, and his heart was getting hotter and hotter. It was on fire. Yang Mingjiang only felt that the fire in his body was getting stronger and stronger, and he could hardly suppress it. He opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but he didn't make a sound for a while. Yang Mingjiang's face changed, and he finally realized that there was something wrong with the heat in his body. He subconsciously put his hand into his mouth, and his face instantly became desperate and pale. In a short time, the tongue in his mouth had disappeared, and even his teeth were melting rapidly. The burning heat instantly turned into a big fire. It was really on fire. The strange green flame instantly sprang out of his body and instantly spread all over his body. Yang Mingjiang's face twisted and his body twitched in the flame, but he couldn't even make a sound. In a very short time, his body twitched more and more weakly, and finally stopped moving, and then burned rapidly with the sofa. Crack! The door of the lounge was pulled open. The assistant, who was smiling charmingly and even a little slutty, walked out of the lounge with a bottle of ice water. She glanced in the direction of the sofa and suddenly froze. In the office, Yang Mingjiang's figure had disappeared, and with him, the whole sofa disappeared. The place was empty as if nothing had ever existed. The secretary was stunned, turned around subconsciously and hurried back to the lounge. In the lounge, Gu Yunxia looked serious and silently put down the phone. The assistant held the water tightly in her hand and said nervously, "Director, Mr. Yang has left and he stole our sofa." "Yang Mingjiang? Stole the sofa?" Gu Yunxia looked puzzled, stared at the assistant strangely and said, "What are you talking about?" Gu Yunxia soon understood that the assistant was not talking nonsense. On this day, a supernatural disappearance occurred in the Sky Academy. Yang Mingjiang, the leader of the course group of the practical lesson of the academy, mysteriously disappeared in Gu Yunxia's office. He seemed to disappear out of thin air with a sofa and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Gu Yunxia asked everyone and even adjusted the surveillance, but she didn't find Yang Mingjiang leaving, nor did she find him leaving with the sofa. It was in this office that Yang Mingjiang disappeared without warning and without a trace. Everyone in the entire Sky Academy was confused, and no one knew what happened. In the evening of the same day, Yuzhou City. In the Hidden Dragon Sea, the power center of Zhongzhou State. President Li Huaqing of Zhongzhou State personally convened a meeting of the decision-making committee. Zhuang Huayang, the headmaster of the Sky Academy. Fan Tianyin, the Minister of Security of Zhongzhou State, was invited to attend the meeting. Gu Xingyun, the god of war of Zhongzhou State, who rarely attended such meetings, attended the meeting. The meeting discussed the death of Gu Changjiang, the director of Huading Special Operations Bureau. Gu Xingyun took out the video. At the place where Gu Changjiang last disappeared, Dongqing Wudi, the commander of the Border Praetorian Corps, and Zhuang Huayang, the headmaster of the Sky Academy, appeared on the scene respectively. Gu Changjiang's body was not found, but the roughly estimated time of death was very consistent with the time when Dongqing Wudi and Zhuang Huayang appeared. The entire decision-making committee was waiting for the explanation of the two. Dongqing Wudi and Zhuang Huayang seriously clarified themselves one by one. Zhong Yongming, the top leader of Huading, was also a member of the decision-making committee. Although he was a little reluctant, he still proved that on the day they met, neither Dongqing Wudi nor Zhuang Huayang had any conflict with Gu Changjiang. It was just that Qin Weibai, the second in command of Samsara, had some unpleasantness with Gu Changjiang. This explanation was easily accepted by everyone. After all, whether it was Gu Changjiang, Zhuang Huayang, or Dongqing Wudi, they were all senior officials of Zhongzhou State. Not to mention that they did not have conflicts. Even if they did have conflicts, they would not be killed. Some basic rules were that everyone must abide by. So everyone's attention was focused in another direction. The time of Gu Changjiang's death was unclear, and the range of his death was relatively large. During this relatively long period of time, there was also another person who caught people's attention on the path that Gu Changjiang had taken. Moreover, this person definitely had the means to kill Gu Changjiang silently. The second master of the Jiang family of South America, Jiang Qinyan. Since a huge foreign force was involved, the tone of the people at the meeting was a little cautious. Finally, after Gu Xingyun said that he would investigate it clearly, the matter seemed to come to an end for the time being. But Gu Xingyun stopped blaming for the time being, and someone opened fire on Kunlun City. At the meeting of the highest level of the decision-making committee of the empire, Zhuang Huayang, in front of several directors and all the members, bluntly said that the atmosphere inside the Sky Academy was now very unhealthy, with crooked ways and foul atmosphere everywhere. In Gu Xingyun's gloomy face, Zhuang Huayang directly named Gu Yunxia. He thought that Gu Yunxia was suspected of fanning evil winds. His position was ambiguous, he ignored the overall situation and he would not unite his colleagues. He almost belittled Gu Yunxia as useless. At the same time, he also cited that during the entrance maneuver, Lu Xiaowei attacked the freshmen, and in the actual combat lesson the teachers targeted the freshmen. Fan Tianyin, the Minister of Security of Zhongzhou State and a cadre of the Southeast Group, also said that he had received a call from his son, Fan Haoyu. It was said that Fan Haoyu was now very insecure in the Sky Academy. Driven by some school leaders with ambiguous positions, he even felt that he was living under the terrible pressure of Kunlun City, not in the Sky Academy. General Dongqing Wudi, who had been holding back his anger because of the explanation, flew into a rage and said that there was something wrong with the environment of the Sky Academy. Even Zhuang Huayang, the headmaster, was responsible. He suggested that all Gu Yunxia's posts in the Sky Academy be revoked. In the face of Gu Xingyun, the famous god of massacre of Zhongzhou State pointed out the duties of the Sky Academy without hesitation. It was to cultivate talents in the special warfare system and the military system for Zhongzhou State, not to raise dogs for Kunlun City. Yi Dongxing, one of the leaders of the Southeast Group and known as the God of Army, also expressed his support for Dongqing Wudi with a cold face. The academics, the giant group and the Wang family of Beihai. Because of a little thing that no one would notice at this time, the three parties reprimanded Gu Yunxia's behavior with harsh words, as if they had made an appointment. It was almost equivalent to pointing at the nose and rebuking Kunlun City for having bad intentions. A director of the Prince Group said a few words for Kunlun City in a perfunctory way, which could be regarded as a way to smooth things over. In the face of the storm of reprimands, Gu Xingyun, the god of war of Zhongzhou State, was expressionless all the time, as still as a mountain. But everyone at the meeting could see the flash of anger in his eyes. A storm suddenly arose in the conference room. The sky over Yuzhou City was covered with haze. Chapter 116. Tender yellow leaves poked out of the willows, green pines and cypresses appeared among the dense needles, buds sprouted on the crabapple trees, and the poplar trees grew taller and taller. The spring breeze swept over the lake, trees, pavilions and lawns. The hidden dragon sea in early spring was picturesque, full of vitality. The spring scenery was boundless and beautiful. The hidden dragon sea was the general name of the hidden sea and the dragon sea. It was said to be a sea, but in fact, it was just a small lake with clear water. In the center of power of Zhongzhou State, which was full of solemnity, this lake, which was called a sea, could be said to be the softest place. Boating on the lake, even the greatest pressure seemed to disappear without a trace. In the morning, at the junction of the hidden sea and the dragon sea, two quaint boats drifted aimlessly with the waves. Gu Xingyun, the governor of Kunlun City, known as the war god of Zhongzhou State, sat in the boat with a fishing rod in his hand, looking calm and gentle. Gu Xingyun looked like he was in his 50s, with gray hair at the temples and an elegant appearance. His figure was not very strong and burly, and he didn't seem to have the arrogant and fierce momentum of the war god at all. Whether seen from a distance or up close, he looked like a very elegant and gentle middle-aged man, calm and collected, but he gave everyone a feeling of unfathomable in a trance. He put down the fishing rod in his hand, took out a cigarette, lit it and took a puff. The smoke drifted and fell into the lake casually. Gu Xingyun quietly observed the hidden dragon sea, which was full of spring, with a soft smile and a happy spirit. Who could have thought that at the meeting of the decision-making committee last night, the war god of Zhongzhou state was jointly attacked by the three groups and almost embarrassed. On another wooden boat beside Gu Xingyun, a ferocious-looking, even ugly one-eyed man kept observing Gu Xingyun's reaction. Seeing the smile on this war god's face, he subconsciously reached out his hand, touched his extremely eye-catching bald head, and said helplessly, "Your Highness, are we just going to let them do whatever they want?" Gu Xingyun, who seemed to have been thinking alone, slightly raised his eyebrows. This elegant old man with a prominent identity and great power was not sharp at all. His casual movement of raising his eyebrows immediately made him look more mature and charming. He took a puff of the cigarette and said with a smile, "What's your opinion, Fengbua?" Gu Fengbua. He was one of the deputy governors of Kunlun City and also the most important right-hand man of Gu Xingyun in the Hidden Dragon Sea. He was ugly. After losing an eye in a fierce battle many years ago, he looked even more ferocious, making people want to stay away from him at first sight. It seemed that his character had changed because of his appearance. He behaved cruelly and was very fond of unconventional methods. Especially in recent years, as his strength surpassed the peak of the Thundershocking realm and stayed between the fulfillment of the Thundershocking realm and the half-step invincible realm, his style of doing things became more arrogant. He was notorious in the special warfare system. He was the most famous mad dog around Gu Xingyun, who would bite whoever he saw and would not let go until he was bitten to death. Since Gu Xingyun became the war god of Zhongzhou state, he had always been extremely steady. He cooperated with Gu Fengbua, who was surly and ruthless, and they had a tacit understanding. They could even be regarded as a golden partner. Years of friendship and tacit understanding made Gu Fengbua never treat Gu Xingyun as an outsider. He held the fishing rod in his hand and said coldly, "Who is Zhuang Huayang? He is an old man who dares to challenge your highness without weighing his own weight. Does he really think he is the same as he was 5 years ago? Your highness, I'm going to challenge Zhuang Huayang and find a chance to kill him. At worst, I'll disable him, which is also a lesson to others. If we don't take a stand this time, any Tom, Dick, or Harry will jump out and bother us. So we might as well take this opportunity to make an example of him." Gu Xingyun did not speak and seemed to be moved. He thought about it for 5 minutes, then shook his head slightly and said with a smile, "Headmaster Zhuang is not a chicken. 5 years ago you were no match for him. 5 years ago I just entered the peak of the Thunder-Shocking realm. Naturally I was no match for him." Gu Fengbua looked dissatisfied and wanted to say more, but he was directly interrupted by Gu Xingyun. "Even now you are no match for Headmaster Zhuang 5 years ago. Forget it. The old headmaster has been in the Sky Academy for many years and has students all over the world. He is a hero to Zhongzhou state and the special warfare system. This is his last stop. I very much hope that he can reach the finish line safely." Gu Xingyun paused, looked at Gu Fengbua, who was still unconvinced and looked uglier, and said calmly, "I'm serious." Gu Fengbua gritted his teeth and did not speak. Zhuang Huayang's state had declined severely in recent years, and he was even seriously inconsistent with the ranking of the top 10 contemporary experts in Zhongzhou state. This was a fact that everyone knew. 10 years ago was Zhuang Huayang's peak period. After Lu Qianqing's death, Zhuang Huayang ranked 4th among the top 10 contemporary experts in Zhongzhou state, second only to Wang Tianzong, Gu Xingyun, and Situ Cangyue. 5 years ago the top 10 experts were ranked again. Gu Qianchuan, the first elder of Kunlun City, Wei Kunlun, the Nirvana Sword Master of Mount Shu, and Dongqing Wudi, the god of massacre of Zhongzhou state, surpassed Zhuang Huayang one by one. The ranking at that time was still true. But for an old man in his 70s, the most unforgiving thing was time. Another 5 years were coming. Zhuang Huayang's strength declined more and more seriously. He was old and frail. If he ranked again this year, it would be extremely difficult for him to get on the list. Gu Fengbua was a popular candidate for the top 10 experts this time. He hoped to defeat Zhuang Huayang and solidify his title as one of the top 10 experts in advance. At that time, Gu Xingyun, Gu Qianchuan, and him would occupy 3 of the top 10 contemporary experts in Kunlun City. Who could compete with him? However, Gu Xingyun obviously did not want Zhuang Huayang to lose his integrity in his old age. During the 20 years in charge of the Sky Academy, Zhuang Huayang had sent away 6 generations of graduates. This was the real world with students. Gu Xingyun acted steadily. In the absence of benefits, he naturally did not want Gu Fengbua to attack Zhuang Huayang. Whether this matter succeeded or failed, it was likely to attract countless hostility, which was not what a wise man would do. So, let's just forget about it this time? Gu Fengbua took a deep breath, looked at Gu Xingyun and waved his hand casually. A pack of cigarettes beside Gu Xingyun flew directly into his hand. He took one out and lit it silently. Forget it. Gu Xingyun nodded and said with a smile, these years the foundation of Kunlun City has become more and more stable, and there are more and more people against Kunlun City. What's the big deal about a few superficial reprimands? Bear it and be steady. There will always be a time to get back at them in the future. As for now, he narrowed his eyes slightly and his eyes flickered, but they were still not the sharpness and decisiveness that belonged to the god of war. His eyes flickered with a kind of cunning and trickery that had experienced ups and downs. He took a drag on the cigarette and continued, the urgent task now is to find out who killed Changjiang. I don't know why when I think of this matter I feel a little uneasy. Gu Fengbo said, the task force has already gone to Huading. Not enough. Gu Xingyun shook his head. In a few days I'm going to go to Huading in person. Within a month this matter must come to light. Gu Fengbo took a deep breath and whispered to himself, Dongqing Wudi, Zhuang Huayang and even Jiang Qinyin, they all have enough strength to kill Changjiang. In addition, there were 2 freshmen of the Sky Academy who appeared at the scene that day. These people are all suspects. Gu Xingyun took over and said, but they are not very suspicious. The 2 freshmen may ignore it, but how can they kill Changjiang? Do you think the unique skills of Kunlun City are the so-called secret books casually painted by charlatans? As for Dongqing Wudi and Zhuang Huayang, I've talked to Zhong Yongming. They didn't have a direct conflict that day. Even if they are narrow-minded and want to kill, they won't do it so quickly. Those 2 old foxes won't be so imprudent. Samsara and Qin Weibai are the most likely. But even if they want to provoke, Qin Weibai won't directly choose Gu Changjiang as a breakthrough, and she went to the airport first. Gu Xingyun analyzed bit by bit, and finally there was only one name left. What about Jiang Qinyin? Gu Fengbo seemed to know what he was thinking and directly mentioned the name. He hesitated and continued, a few days ago, First Elder seemed to be in Huading. Crack! The fishing rod in Gu Xingyun's hand was directly crushed, and the fishing rod sank into the lake. A fish that had just been hooked escaped. Gu Xingyun was expressionless. He whispered to himself, First Elder. In recent years the foundation of Kunlun City had gradually stabilized, and some internal contradictions had gradually surfaced. For the Gu family, Gu Qianchuan's bloodline was the real direct line, but now the power of Kunlun City was controlled by Gu Xingyun's bloodline. Gu Xingyun was unwilling to hand over power, and Gu Qianchuan was unwilling to give up his orthodox status. Such contradictions were almost irreconcilable. And with the passage of time, without external pressure, these contradictions had become more and more obvious in recent years. As a confidant of the bloodline of the city governor, Gu Changjiang had always been at odds with Gu Qianchuan. It was normal for him to want to kill Gu Changjiang. For many years the Jiang family, a behemoth, had maintained a hazy connection with Kunlun City, both overtly and covertly. In fact, Gu Qianchuan seemed to have a closer connection with them. But could this slightly closer relationship let Jiang Qinyin and the Jiang family participate in the internal fight of Kunlun City? Could it even let Jiang Qinyin, an expert of the invincible realm, personally clear the obstacles for Gu Qianchuan to seize power? Gu Fengbo seriously pondered for a while, shook his head and said hesitantly, First Elder can't offer such a bargaining chip. He can. Gu Xingyun said expressionlessly, but does he really dare to offer such a bargaining chip? A phone suddenly rang. Gu Xingyun took out his mobile phone and looked at the 3 words, Gu Yunxia, on the caller ID. He frowned slightly, picked it up and chuckled. Yunxia, what's the matter? Gu Yunxia said something urgently on the other end of the phone. Gu Xingyun's smile suddenly disappeared. He silently put down the phone and narrowed his eyes. Your Highness, what's the matter? Gu Fengbo looked at him in confusion and asked. Yun sect is dead, Gu Xingyun said. Looking at Gu Fengbo's suddenly cold and ferocious face, he continued, Mengjiang mysteriously disappeared in Yunxia's office. There was no clue for a whole day. Gu Fengbo clenched his fists tightly, his face livid. What an eventful time. Gu Xingyun sighed softly. The air around him fluctuated slightly, and the ripples on the lake spread. The next second, his body had appeared by the lake. Let's go to Huading right away. You come with me. Gu Fengbo stood up, jumped off the boat and walked on the water. Monstrous waves shot around him with amazing momentum. At the same time, at the foot of Qingyun Peak of Kunlun Mountain, in the ice and snow thousands of meters above sea level, a figure wrapped in a black cloak appeared at the gate of Kunlun City. He carried a long sword and moved forward slowly. The city gate, which had been destroyed by Wang Tianzong's sword, had been urgently repaired in a few days. The black figure with a long sword looked at the busy figure at the city gate with mockery in his eyes. "Who are you? Stop." The guards who repaired the city gate in front of the gate immediately found the black shadow in their sight and shouted loudly. The black shadow continued to move forward. The guards in front of the city gate suddenly became nervous. Dozens of people quickly gathered and said at the same time, "Stop." In their sight, the black shadow stopped as expected. However, before the guards could breathe a sigh of relief, the black shadow had already spoken directly. His voice shook the sky, and the wind and snow in the city flew wildly in the fierce sword intent. As his voice spread throughout the city, he said, "I'm Saint of Samsara, under the order of the palace master. I have a letter for His Highness the God of War." He reached into his arms and took out an envelope. In the eyes of all the guards who suddenly became nervous, Saint stretched out his hand and waved it. The snow-white envelope instantly cut through the wind and snow. The wind howled and the sword intent in the city rang. The envelope, like a white flowing light, shot straight to the city gate. There was a loud bang. In the wind and snow, the gate of Kunlun City, which had been urgently repaired, collapsed again. Gravel flew. Saint turned and left peacefully, not in a hurry. Several superiors of the thunder-shocking realm in Kunlun City appeared at the same time. They looked at the envelope on top of a pile of stones, and then at Saint's back, gloomy and silent. Who would want to provoke the first supermaster of Samsara if possible? Skeleton, the thunder-shocking realm expert who had appeared when Wang Tianzong was about to enter the city, hesitated for a moment, reached out to take the envelope and opened it. Only after a glance, his face changed dramatically. Gu Xingyun didn't go to Huading in person after all. Even Gu Fengbo didn't move. Because just when the two were about to leave, a message swept through every corner of the dark world at the speed of a hurricane. It was a letter from the master of Samsara Palace to the lord of Kunlun City. It was delivered by Saint. When the letter reached Gu Xingyun's ears, it also spread throughout the dark world. The whole dark world was instantly shocked, and the whole world was in an uproar. "I heard that Kunlun City's martial arts is unparalleled in the world and is the pillar of martial arts in Zhongzhou State. I've admired it for a long time, so I came to ask for advice. Your Highness is the god of war of Zhongzhou State with unparalleled combat capability. You will not disappoint me, a woman. On June 15th at the Sky Academy, I will wait for your Highness's arrival. I would like to see your Highness's elegant demeanor. I hope your Highness will not miss this opportunity. Swords and sabers have no eyes. I hope your Highness can put aside the worries of life and death and recreate the glory of Kunlun City. Although I am a woman and child, I am willing to let go of everything and discuss the pinnacle of martial arts with your Highness. I will not retreat until I die and will not rest until I die. If your Highness is defeated, I hope that your Highness will not be stingy with your head. It's fine if your Highness avoids the battle. You can just refer to yourself as a rat from now on. In the future, when I return to the east, I will slaughter the rats and destroy your Highness's rat nest. The glory of the Gu family for hundreds of years is tied to your Highness. I hope your Highness will consider it carefully. Signed by Samsara. They would not retreat until they were dead and would not rest until they were dead. On June 15th, the Sky Academy. The entire dark world thought that the master of Samsara Palace was crazy. The entire dark world was also waiting for Gu Xingyun's reaction. On the same day that Gu Xingyun remained silent. In the northeast of Zhongzhou State. For the first time in many years, Situ Tsangyue, the hidden god of Zhongzhou State, walked out of Sai City, Mount Taibai. She challenged Gu Qianchuan, the first elder of Kunlun City. It was almost the same wording as the master of Samsara Palace. Chapter 117. As one of the top wealthy families in Zhongzhou State, the Dongqing clan was extremely prosperous in Dongqing Wudi's generation. Dongqing Hanguang, the old master, also had 5 brothers, but 3 of them died on the battlefield. He and his younger brother, Dongqing Hanjian, had been supporting the huge Dongqing clan. At that time, the Dongqing clan was still a top wealthy and glorious family, but the pressure was not known to outsiders. In Dongqing Wudi's generation, the whole Dongqing clan really blossomed and bore fruit. Dongqing Wudi had 5 siblings: Wudi, Wushuang, Endless and Boundless, and Dongqing Wuqiu. Each of them was a real leader in their respective fields and could take charge of an area on their own. Even his wives and sons-in-law were all talents. Everyone in this generation of the Dongqing clan was not useless. Because of this, the Dongqing clan was now more prosperous than ever. The leader of the Dongqing clan today was Dongqing Wudi, a member of the decision-making committee known as the God of Massacre in Zhongzhou State. Although he was not a director giant, the only director giant in the giant group often followed Dongqing Wudi's opinion, which showed the status of the Dongqing clan in the giant group. If it weren't for the fact that Dongqing Wudi had no decent men in the next generation and only relied on the two sisters, Dongqing Qiuqi and Dongqing Rushi, the momentum of the Dongqing clan today would be even more amazing. That was really carrying on the past and opening up the future. It was drizzling in Luojing. Tiny raindrops fell on the sky above the ancient capital of the 13 dynasties, beautiful and tranquil. An Audi with a military license plate slowly drove out of the airport and went all the way along the airport expressway. After crossing most of the urban area of Luojing, it went straight to the suburbs at a steady pace. The mountain that symbolized supreme power in Luojing was getting closer and closer. The mountain rain was hazy. There was a vast silence between heaven and earth. On both sides of the mountain road, soldiers in raincoats with loaded guns stood motionless, silent and piercingly cold. The mountain occupied by the Dongqing clan was said to be a military-restricted zone. A regiment of troops was stationed here all year round. From the head of the regiment to each soldier, although the establishment number was under the name of the Zhongyuan military region, the Dongqing clan was responsible for all the living and wages of these veterans transferred from the border Praetorian Corps. It was not an exaggeration to say that this was the Dongqing clan's private army. The Audi with the military license plate passed by the sign engraved with the words, Military Restricted Zone. The two rows of veterans guarding the intersection of the mountain road turned around at the same time and gestured for the Audi to stop. The Audi slowly came to a stop. The captain of the veteran squad quickly walked to the driver's seat, and before he could reach out to knock on the window had already rolled down. An extremely burly figure appeared in the captain's line of sight. This was a young man who looked to be in his 30s. He was dressed in a military uniform and had a resolute expression on his face. His body was so huge that it was almost majestic. Even though he was sitting in the car, the captain could clearly sense the other party's surging and suffocating power. The captain glanced at the lieutenant colonel insignia and subconsciously wanted to salute. However, the majestic young man had already slowly said, "Make way. Mrs. Dongqing is in the car." Mrs. Dongqing? The captain was stunned subconsciously. He had been in the Dongqing clan for nearly 5 years and naturally knew the important figures of the Dongqing clan very well. Now several madams of Dongqing seemed to be on the mountain. How could another madam of Dongqing appear here? The captain was still in a daze. The rear window of the Audi had slowly rolled down, and a very soft and gentle voice sounded from the back. "Is it old Sue? When I went to the border camp I saw you beside Wudi. Wudi said that you took a bullet for him on the battlefield? Why were you transferred here from the Border Control Corps?" Old Sue turned his head in disbelief. In the back of the car, through the rolled-down window, a woman who looked only about 30 years old was looking at him with a smile. This was a woman who could hardly be described as beautiful. If one had to add a word to her, it could only be beautiful. A woman who was so beautiful that people would feel awe. She was dressed in a decent lady's suit and had her hair tied up. Every move she made was indescribably graceful and luxurious. The peonies in Luojing were the best in the world, and she was like the most beautiful peonies in Luojing. She was dignified, elegant, gentle and kind. Her beautiful face seemed a little haggard, but when her eyes moved, there was only a faint dignity that could make people feel pressure, in addition to amiability. Old Sue's whole body trembled with excitement. The rain beat on the raincoat, pitter-patter. Under the rain, Old Sue suddenly stood up straight, saluted and said loudly, "Secretary Bai." The woman nodded gently, coughed and said with a smile, "I've caught a bad cold recently, so I won't get out of the car. We're on the same side, so there's no need to be so polite, right?" Yes. Secretary Bai's health is important. You must pay more attention." Old Sue nodded repeatedly and spoke almost incoherently. He suddenly turned around, waved his hand and said, "Get out of the way, Secretary Bai is back." Several soldiers immediately got out of the way. The Audi slowly walked past Old Sue. When it brushed past the car, Old Sue narrowed his eyes. He could vaguely see a young woman who looked somewhat similar to Secretary Bai sitting next to her. She was casually playing with a dagger with a piercing cold glint in her eyes. Old Sue shook his head, pulled a soldier over, suppressed the ecstasy in his heart and said, "Hurry up, call the regimental commander and tell him that Secretary Bai is back. Ask him to tell the old master quickly." In the entire Zhongzhou state, there was only one Mrs. Dongqing who could be called Secretary Bai. She was an extraordinary woman in the political arena of Zhongzhou state. She was Dongqing Wudi's wife, but she was not a vassal of Dongqing Wudi. Even when the two stood together, people could also see the sky that belonged to her when they admired the temperament of the god of massacre. Bai Qingqian, the former governor of Qinzhou province in Zhongzhou state and the current secretary of Guangdong province, used to be the first miss of the Bai family and now Mrs. Dongqing. Old Su took a deep breath. As a veteran transferred from the Border Control Corps, they had long given their faith and soul to the Dongqing clan. Anything worth being happy about in this top wealthy family was also worth celebrating for them. Bai Qingqian's arrival in the Dongqing clan was a happy event for the entire Dongqing clan. Old Su chuckled foolishly and lit a cigarette. He took a puff happily and felt very comfortable. He had heard the old people here talk about the marriage of their marshal in private. It was said that at the beginning the marshal and his wife were very loving. They had been attached to each other for several years after they met and got married. His wife was a high-ranking female official with a bright future outside, but at home she was the most gentle and filial young mistress. She loved her husband, was filial to her parents-in-law, and never had any dissatisfaction. Now the relationship between the marshal and his wife was stable, but it was no longer the same as it was many years ago. According to some veterans who had stayed here for many years ago for some unknown reason, his wife had a great conflict with Dongqing Hongguang, and even broke up completely. All of a sudden, they were almost incompatible like fire and water, and even his wife's attitude toward the marshal became cold. His wife also moved down the mountain from that time. A few years later, the marshal used some unknown means to ease the relationship with his wife. His wife also came back for a New Year's Eve dinner. Since then no one had seen his wife come back. Over the years, even if the marshal and his wife met, they were mostly at their respective workplaces. If one counted carefully, this situation had lasted for almost 20 years. No one knew why his wife broke up with the old master and no one dared to ask. Over time, everything about Bai Qingqian seemed to have disappeared from the mountain of the Dongqing clan. If Bai Qingqian hadn't met Old Su when she went to the Border Control Corps to visit Dongqing Wudi 5 years ago, Old Su wouldn't even have recognized Bai Qingqian. Old Su grinned. For the first time in more than a decade his wife came home. In any case, this was a good sign. The Audi drove all the way through the lush path in the mountain. The mountains and rivers were hazy, and so was the misty rain. Bai Qingqian silently looked out of the window at the strange and familiar mountain scenery, and said nothing. A woman who seemed to be 25 or 26 years old sat lazily beside Bai Qingqian, casually trimming her nails with a dagger, and said with a smile, "Aunt, the Dongqing clan has changed a lot, hasn't it? I remember I came here once when I was a child, when I was only 11 or 12 years old. After that, you didn't come back here and I didn't come back either. Ah, by the way, you seemed to come back once later. My father was so angry at that time that he almost came to kill you." The woman's appearance looked similar to Bai Qingqian's. Sitting together, they looked like a pair of charming sisters, but their temperaments were completely opposite. Bai Qingqian seemed to have a kind of graceful and noble atmosphere and gentleness at any time, while the woman sitting next to Bai Qingqian only gave people a clear feeling of coldness and danger. It was a kind of almost overwhelming momentum which made it easy for people to ignore that she was actually very beautiful. Bai Yuming of the Bai family in Yuzhou, known as the Little God of Massacre, was the niece of Bai Qingqian, the top leader of Yuzhou City, the eldest daughter of Bai Zhanfeng, a member of the decision-making committee, and the first miss of the Bai family. This year, first Miss Bai, who was nearly 33 years old, was still alone. She did not attract countless young talents like her aunt did in the past. She even rarely appeared in public, but in the eyes of some real big shots, Bai Yuming was a very important figure. At the age of 33, she was an expert who was about to enter the peak of the thunder-shocking realm in the stabilization phase, and was as famous as Wang Xiaoyao of the Wang family of Beihai. Just this point alone was enough to prove that she was extremely talented. Bai Yuming was not called Bai Yuming before. Only a few people knew that the ghostly name Yuming came from the mouth of Great Master Wu Wei, the most respected old monk in Zhongzhou state, and it was Great Master Wu Wei who personally came to give her a name. This honor could not be refused by the Bai family at all. What's more, what Great Master Wu Wei said when he gave her a name was somewhat shocking, so the Bai family had to accept this extremely strange name. This woman is extremely lucky, but when she reaches the peak she will decline. She will die early, so she should be buffered by Yin Qi. The word Yuming is the most suitable. This was the original words of Great Master Wu Wei. Since then the name Bai Yuming had been fixed. Now Bai Yuming, who was 33 years old, had been very smooth since she was a child. Although she was not famous in Yuzhou in the dark world, the title of Little God of Massacre was extremely resounding. Her progress in martial arts seemed to indicate that she was extremely lucky. "Aunt, do you remember you took me here to play when I was a child? There seems to be a water garden on the mountain, right? Let's go and have a look later." Bai Yuming looked at Bai Qingqian, who was silent, and continued to say with a smile. Bai Qingqian shook her head and said softly, "I have long forgotten where it is." They had not contacted each other for more than 10 years. Not to mention the water garden, she could hardly remember where the old man lived. Bai Yuming sighed softly and said no more. It had always been a mystery why her aunt broke up with the old master of the Dongqing clan over the years. Even when she returned to her parents' home, no matter how her father asked, her aunt refused to say a word. If it were not for her aunt's unchanged attitude in supporting the Dongqing clan, perhaps the Bai family and the Dongqing clan, the two pillar families of the giant group, would have publicly broken up. Chapter 118. There's one more chapter, 2 in a row. Don't miss it. In the wind and rain, the Audi sped up and went straight to the top of the mountain. In front of the villa on the top of the mountain, umbrellas were leaning against each other. Under the curtain of rain, led by Dongqing Hongguang, Dongqing Wudi, Thunder God, Uncle An, and the servants in the villa all came out to welcome Bai Qingqian, who had not been back for more than 10 years. Bai Qingqian looked at this scene quietly with calm eyes. "Aunt, you're so important that the old master came out to welcome you in person. Do you think he will hold the umbrella for you later?" The Audi slowly stopped in front of the villa. Bai Qingqian opened the door with indifferent eyes and said calmly, "Why do we need others to hold the umbrella? Don't we have our own umbrella?" The young man who was driving had already walked out of the driver's seat with an umbrella. Dongqing Hongguang, who had walked over with an umbrella, paused subconsciously, and the others also stopped. They were not afraid, but the impact of the young man who got out of the driver's seat was too strong. He was a strong man in the real sense. Nearly 2 meters tall, he was tall and straight. His body was almost beyond the range of fat and thin. His whole body was full of explosive muscles, indescribably strong and tough. He held the umbrella and opened the door. His expression was calm, but there was a force constantly emanating from him. This man had no momentum. The only thing people could think of when they saw him was his pure strength, which seemed to be able to tear tigers and leopards. This kind of strength ignored realms and had nothing to do with combat effectiveness. His burly and thick body casually stood there, giving people a suffocating sense of oppression. "Su Chu." Dongqing Wudi, who followed Dongqing Hongguang, raised his eyebrows and looked surprised. "This is the first disciple of your jade pool?" Dongqing Hongguang looked at the young man in front of him, who could even make him feel a strong sense of oppression, with a face full of admiration. The first disciple of Jade Pool, Su Chu, codenamed Giant God, was born with Thunder Vein and had unparalleled courage. With the strength at the peak of the fire-flaming realm, he could fight against a thunder-shocking realm expert. He was worthy of being called a fierce general. Su Chu, who was 30 years old this year, had been staying in Jade Pool for many years. He had no official position and rarely went down the mountain. He was even a nobody in the outside world. Dongqing Hongguang had heard about this fierce talent from his son. Now feeling the surging power in his body, the old master suddenly felt that he deserved his reputation. But why was the eldest disciple of the Jade Pool by Qingqian's side? And even became his chauffeur? Little martial uncle. Uncle. Su Chu, who was holding an umbrella, glanced at Dongqing Wudi and said hello to Bai Yuming, who got off the car. "You?" Dongqing Wudi frowned. As soon as he opened his mouth, he saw Bai Qingqian in a black suit and trousers get out of the car and stand under the umbrella in Su Chu's hand. Graceful, luxurious, and colorful. In an instant, as she got out of the car, the gloomy sky seemed to brighten up. Dongqing Wudi immediately stopped talking. He looked at the old master beside him and whispered, "Dad." Every time after a meeting in Yuzhou, he would go home for a day and then go to the border camp. Today was a coincidence that Bai Qingqian came home. Dongqing Wudi was surprised and wanted to take this opportunity to ease the relationship between his wife and his father. Dongqing Hongguang's eyes had already moved away from Su Chu and fell on Bai Qingqian. He held the umbrella tightly in his hand and took a step forward. The old man, who had been fearless all his life, suddenly felt a little timid and nervous at this moment. His eyes gradually became complicated. He was no longer calm but a little guilty and helpless. Bai Qingqian stood quietly and looked at Dongqing Hongguang, expressionless and silent. "You're back." Dongqing Hongguang pretended to be natural and greeted her. Bai Qingqian nodded and said directly, I have a favor to ask. Okay. Dongqing Hongguang nodded with a smile and didn't ask what it was. He said kindly, let's go in first. It's still a little cold outside. No need. Bai Qingqian said indifferently, just a few words. I'll leave after that. Dongqing Hongguang and Dongqing Wudi's faces changed at the same time. She went up the mountain but didn't enter the door and didn't give any explanation. This was enough to show that even if Bai Qingqian took the initiative to go up the mountain this time, it was not because she wanted to, but because she had to. She hadn't come back for more than 10 years. Now even if she came back, she was unwilling to enter the door. This was no longer a problem that could be explained by the knot in her heart. This was resentment, the most naked, resolute, and helpless resentment. A strong look of pain flashed in Dongqing Hongguang's eyes. He opened his mouth and murmured to himself, let's go in first. It's cold outside. At this moment, the old master was no longer the once all-powerful director of the decision-making committee, nor was he the old patriarch of the Dongqing clan. He was the most ordinary old man, guilty, helpless, and painful, but he didn't know how to be forgiven. Perhaps he couldn't forgive her. I could have gone in. Bai Qingqian gently raised the corner of her mouth. She was still so noble and graceful, but her smile was full of a kind of chilling coldness. A week ago. Dongqing Hongguang's mouth twitched and he stood where he was in a daze. Even his hand holding the umbrella was slightly trembling. A week ago. That was the time when Li Tianlan came here. Did anyone inform me when you picked him up from Huading? Where were you when he was seriously injured in Huading? Where were you when he was targeted in the Sky Academy? Yes, you were all on the mountain standing so high. The scenery is very good, isn't it? Every word was heart-wrenching. Bai Qingqian's expression grew colder, with a kind of deep-rooted hatred. Qingqian? Dongqing Wudi opened his mouth with a bitter smile. As soon as he called out her name, Bai Qingqian had directly interrupted him. Shut up. She looked coldly at Dongqing Wudi and then at Dongqing Hongguang, saying with a disdainful face, the god of massacre family? Military giant? Are you men? Ahem, ahem, ahem. In the wind and rain, her body trembled slightly and she violently coughed. Let's talk inside. Dongqing Hongguang continued to speak, and his tone was weak, almost pleading. Bai Qingqian smiled coldly. She took a deep breath and said calmly, when I came out of here more than 10 years ago, I told myself that I was still the daughter-in-law of the Dongqing clan. I would fulfill the responsibilities and obligations of this identity, and my ashes could also be buried with Wudi. But as long as I am alive, I will never step into this door. If I break this oath, I am willing to be struck by lightning and die. Resolute, mournful, and without the slightest leeway. As soon as she said this, everyone's expression changed dramatically. Bai Yuming looked at her aunt in disbelief. It was not until this moment that she realized that the secret that her aunt and the Dongqing clan had hidden for many years seemed to be more serious than she had imagined. If she took one step into the door, she would be willing to be struck by lightning and die. How desperate must a woman be to make such a vicious oath? Thunder rolled across the sky. Bai Qingqian took a step forward and walked directly out of the umbrella in Su Chu's hand. The cold rain fell on her, wetting her body and pale cheeks. She looked up at the gloomy sky. Thunder rumbled across the sky. Bai Qingqian suddenly smiled, desolate and brilliant. She looked at Dongqing Hongguang in front of her and said word by word, it's thunder. Are you so eager for me to die? Dongqing Hongguang staggered back a step, his face pale, and said painfully, I'm sorry, the Dongqing clan is sorry to you. Bai Qingqian smiled tremblingly and suddenly said calmly, the Dongqing clan has owed me for many years. Old master, don't you think so? Dongqing Hongguang nodded, his face pale. Okay. Bai Qingqian said, you owe me for so many years. Today you pay it back. Su Chu is going to enter the Sky Academy as a student. Isn't there one less instructor for the actual combat lesson in the Sky Academy? I think Yuming is very suitable. Dongqing Wudi, who was as bitter as his father, frowned and said subconsciously, Qingqian, do you want to? I don't want to. Bai Qingqian glanced at him and said coldly, I'm doing it. I have to do it. I know you care about Tianlan. He's my son-in-law. I know what to do. Now he's your son-in-law? He's only your son-in-law, not mine. Bai Qingqian's cold eyes fell directly on Dongqing Wudi. Dongqing Wudi's heart suddenly sank. The last time he saw his wife's eyes like this, she hadn't said a word to him for several years. This time, I'll do my best. Dongqing Hongguang finally said in a hoarse voice. Bai Qingqian nodded and turned to get into the Audi. Bai Yuming and Su Chu got in the car at the same time. When the car turned around and left, the only female provincial leader in Zhongzhou State rolled down the window again and said calmly, "When Tianlan married my daughter, I came back to attend the wedding. This mountain is too much of an eyesore. I don't like it." The Audi went down the mountain in the wind and rain and went away. Dongqing Hongguang stood there with an umbrella and didn't move for a long time. "Dad," Dongqing Wudi cried. The marshal of Zhongzhou State was ruthless when facing the enemy, but he was a complete mess when dealing with his own family affairs. He didn't have the demeanor of a god of slaughter at all. "Say no more." Dongqing Hongguang took a deep breath and said calmly, "Do as Qingqian said. Su Chu's matter is easy. You have to fight for the position of the leader of the actual combat course for the girl of the Bai family." Dongqing Wudi nodded, then shook his head with a wry smile. This was the most difficult thing to do. Zhuanghuayang State was declining. Kunlun City was ambitious in the composition of this year's Sky Academy. Lu Xiaowei and Yang Mingjiang were both forcibly inserted by Kunlun City in order to take the leadership of the Sky Academy after Zhuanghuayang retired. But now Lu Xiaowei was dead and Yang Mingjiang disappeared mysteriously. Kunlun City's influence in the Sky Academy had suffered heavy losses. In the next period of time, the personnel changes in the Sky Academy were bound to be the focus of the special warfare system. Tribulation had not adapted to Lu Xiaowei's position, and now it was very likely that he would be further in charge of the political department. The Wang family of Beihai would definitely get the position of deputy director of teaching left by tribulation. This was part of the deal. As for Yang Mingjiang's position, if Kunlun City let go again, Gu Yunxia's strength would be greatly damaged, and her voice in the Sky Academy would be even weaker. How could it be easy to take Yang Mingjiang's position from Kunlun City? A phone suddenly rang. Dongqing Wudi picked up the phone and listened for a while. Then his eyes narrowed. He thought for a while and said softly, "Dad, it's Little Five." The master of Samsara Palace suddenly issued a letter of challenge to Kunlun City. On June 15th, she will fight with Gu Xingyun in the Sky Academy to the death. Sai City also took action. Situ Tsangyue has made an appointment to fight with Gu Qianchuan. The place has not been decided yet, but it will also be a fight to the death. Little Five was Dongqing Wuqiu, who ranked 5th in Dongqing Wudi's generation. Now he was the minister of the 2nd Department of the General Staff Headquarters of Zhongzhou State, which was the legendary military intelligence department. Naturally, the news he got was the most accurate and fast. Dongqing Hongguang, who was a little lost, froze for a moment, and then instinctively narrowed his eyes. The thing about Bai Yuming, this is an opportunity. He was silent for a while before he slowly opened his mouth. Dongqing Wudi was stunned. He understood what Dongqing Hongguang meant, but he couldn't believe it. "Dad, as the god of war of Zhongzhou State, Gu Xingyun doesn't even have the courage to fight with the master of Samsara Palace?" "Of course he has the courage to fight. But does he dare to fight to the death? Does Zhongzhou State dare?" Chapter 119. There was an autumn pond on Mount Dibbing. It was called a pond, but in fact, it was a river winding down from the mountainside, with a length of 6 or 7 kilometers. The autumn pond was located in a low terrain with a radius of 100 meters in the middle of the river. The water was clear, just like a treasure pond. The autumn pond was not big, but it had its own scenery in 4 seasons. It was gentle and beautiful. When everything was revived, the clear water flowed, and the ripples in the pond were turbulent. The green mountains, white clouds, and green trees were clearly reflected in the water. The gentle wind blew with sweet moisture. It was picturesque and beautiful. It could make immortals forget their worries and teach mortals to forget their customs. Summer River and Autumn Pond. This was a private scenery that belonged only to Mount Dibbing and the Wang family of Beihai. At first glance, it might not be amazing, but when looking back, people were already immersed in it. Lin Fengting liked this kind of scenery very much. He was about to reach the age of knowing his destiny, and he had been traveling all his life, either by himself or with his wife and children. When a person had peerless martial arts but no ambition, he just wanted to live an incognito life and had endless money to spend. He could really live a comfortable life however he wanted. In the past few decades, Lin Fengting had traveled around the world. He had seen too many enchanting sceneries of verdant hills and limpid waters. He had seen too many magnificent spectacles of blooming flowers. He had seen too many magnificent scenes. To enter the fire-flaming realm, he went straight to the polar region. To enter the invincible realm, he climbed Mount Everest alone. His life was really too full and rich, leisurely and wonderful. But no matter how many places he had been to, in his heart, in front of him, Mount Dibbing, was the most worry-free and worry-free pool. The lake and the mountain were beautiful and the water was hazy. This situation and this scenery were the most unique and natural. I really don't want to leave. I've been sitting here for a day and I even forgot the way home. Lin Fengting sat quietly on the green and soft grass and sighed softly. His tone was soft, with a trace of imperceptible sadness. Then stay here. Wang Tianzong sat beside Lin Fengting and said with a chuckle, "You can choose any palace on Mount Dibbing, even if you want the Sword Emperor Palace where I live. But you have to wait for them to repair it." Lin Fengting turned his head and glanced at him. He put aside the fishing rod in his hand and let the fish that had bitten the hook struggle to escape under the water. He took out a cigarette and handed it to Wang Tianzong. He shook his head and said, "If I really live in Mount Dibbing, I'm afraid I can't see any scenery. There's always time." Wang Tianzong said seriously, "It's not a big deal and you don't need to do anything about it. You can live a stable life now. If you want, how about hanging the title of Lord Equal in the Wang family of Beihai? Your order is my order for everything in the Wang family of Beihai." He stood side by side with Sword Emperor in the Wang family of Beihai. Such an honor was simply supreme. Not to mention others, even among all the invincible realm experts in the Dark World, there were few who could refuse this condition. Lin Fengting shook his head and said calmly, "Forget it. I'm not the kind of person who can sit still. I don't want to participate in your affairs. It's exhausting. How can it be as refreshing as me to do whatever I want?" Wang Tianzong sighed softly and didn't say much. When the Li family was destroyed, Lin Fengting, who was of the same origin as the Li family, didn't stand up. Instead, he let the martial arts force founded by the ancestors of the Lin family disappear bit by bit. With such a mentality, the other party obviously made up his mind not to participate in the game of the Dark World. If he insisted too much, what good would it do? Wang Tianzong was a little lost in thought. Over the past 500 years, the Wang family of Beihai and Zhuanyuantai of Kunlun had produced 9 successive generations of invincible realm experts. But no one knew that the Lin family where Lin Fengting was also produced 9 successive generations of invincible realm experts. In the shining years of glory and honor, the Wang family of Beihai. In Zhuanyuantai of Kunlun, every invincible realm expert was famous in the world. But what about the invincible realm experts of the Lin family? They traveled all day long and lived in seclusion. No matter how the outside world changed, they remained motionless. 9-generation invincible realm experts. Except for their ancestors, no one else entered the human world. They came and went quietly. No matter how time went by, no matter how the wind and clouds surged. What kind of transcendent elegance was this? Wang Tianzong lit a cigarette, shook his head and said, "Where are you going next?" "Go back to Europe and wander around. Chushua wants to go to the Vatican. She said she wanted to see the headquarters of the Vatican. I may take her there." Lin Fengting said casually with the cigarette but in his mouth. "To the Vatican?" Wang Tianzong said with a playful smile. "You caused a lot of trouble there in the past few years, didn't you? I heard that their pope has issued an arrest warrant. Arsis has been chasing you for several days, but you still managed to escape. The news from Italy is vague, but I guess it's you." "How do you know?" Lin Fengting looked embarrassed. There was really nothing glorious about it. Besides, it had been 5 or 6 years and he almost forgot it. "You sold the Tao Te Ching in front of the Apostolic Palace. And you set up a stall to tell people's fortunes. Who else could it be except you? No wonder the Pope denounced you as a heretic. And how many heretics in the world can Arsis not catch up with? Saint Arsis. Saint War Angel of the Vatican, ranked second on the world divine list, second only to the Sword Emperor Wang Tianzong. The representative of the Vatican's force chased him for several days and finally failed to catch up with him. Wang Tianzong casually thought about it and knew it was Lin Fengting by elimination. Ahem. Lin Fengting coughed and suddenly looked around. This handsome middle-aged man suddenly had a trace of wretchedness. He said with a sneaky smile, "I tell you, don't sell me out. That bastard chased me for 3 days and almost chased me out of the border of Italy. Later, I went to the Vatican again and beat him up when he was not paying attention." "Ah, cool." Wang Tianzong's mouth twitched. He didn't know this news. Not to mention the strength of Lin Fengting and Arsis. Lin Fengting dared to go deep into the Vatican to beat Arsis, which showed that Lin Fengting was lawless and did whatever he wanted. And the Vatican naturally wouldn't publicize this matter. It was not a good thing for their Saint War Angel to be beaten up. Prepare a plane ticket for me. I'll leave tonight. I'll go to Yuzhou first, then the border and then back. Lin Fengting said lazily, playing with the fishing rod in his hand. I thought you would go to Huading. Wang Tianzong turned his head and took a deep look at Lin Fengting, chuckling. Lin Fengting was silent for a while and then shook his head. I wanted to see the descendant of the Li family of this generation, but I gave up after thinking about it. I didn't want to enter the secular world. What's the use of going there? I don't want to, so I won't give him any hope. Wang Tianzong thought for a while and said, the sword you owe the Li family, I'll pay it back when the time is right. Lin Fengting shook his head and repeated Li Tianlan's name twice. Suddenly he said, how are you going to deal with Li Tianlan? I gave him a set of immortality. Wang Tianzong said expressionlessly, even if the Wang family owes the Li family too much, the immortality has been paid off. From now on we don't owe each other anything. If we become enemies in the future we'll kill him. Lin Fengting moved the corner of his mouth and tentatively said, with Yuetong by his side in the future? Wang Tianzong's expression didn't change. He just quietly looked at the water of the where-forgotten pool in front of him. At this moment he seemed to be far away from Lin Fengting. He was no longer Lin Fengting's childhood friend, but the Sword Emperor of Zhongzhou State who ranked on the divine list. Ambitious. A word suddenly appeared in Lin Fengting's mind, and his eyes became a little dispirited. He stretched out his hand and pointed downstream, whispering, the hot spring at the foot of the mountain is still there, right? The Xia River of Mount Dibing flowed around the mountain. The autumn pond in front of them made people forget their worries. The area at the end of the downstream was natural geothermal. The Wang family changed a medium-sized hot spring there, which was not open to the public. It was only used occasionally during private leisure time. It's still there. Wang Tianzong's expression softened a little and he whispered. In fact, standing here, the most impressive thing for me is when I was a child. Lin Fengting said softly, looking absent-minded and soft, I was 9 years old that year? Second brother was 11 and you were 12, right? When my father took me to Mount Dibing for the first time, he said that he would introduce 2 good brothers to me. Uncle Wang took you to pick us up and then we picked up Uncle Li together. At that time the 3 brothers were soaking in the hot spring below, and we peed in the water above. Oh, that should be the last time the 3 of them and the 3 of us got together, right? Later I saw second brother alone and I also saw you alone, but we didn't get together. Later second brother committed treason and died at the border until now. His voice lowered and finally became silent. How many years has it been? Wang Tianzong tightly pursed his lips and said nothing. I always remember the 3 words good brother. Lin Fengting paused and finally said, big brother. When Wang Tianzong was about to speak, the phone suddenly rang. He answered the phone and said indifferently, hello. Lin Fengting looked at him quietly. Until he hung up the phone and a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, he said calmly, what's the matter? There's a very interesting thing. Wang Tianzong said softly, on June 15th, the master of Samsara Palace challenged Gu Xingyun in the Sky Academy to a life-and-death battle. Situ Tsangyue also joined in the fun and challenged Gu Qianchuan. Interesting. This year's special warfare system and the dark world are getting more and more interesting. Lin Fengting's eyes lit up slightly, and then he frowned and said, has the master of Samsara Palace recovered from her injury? June 15th? It's estimated that it's difficult for her to fully recover in more than a month. Wang Tianzong was silent and did not speak. His eyes kept flickering and he looked thoughtful. What do you think? Lin Fengting waited for a while and continued to ask. He lived in seclusion and knew far less about the general trend of Zhongzhou State and the dark world than Wang Tianzong, who was involved in the game. But he had to pay special attention to the master of Samsara Palace. The master of Samsara Palace could pour out the 24 moves of sword, the core unique skill of Zhuanyuantai of Kunlun. What was the relationship between her and the Li family? I don't know. Huading has been a little busy recently. Maybe she wanted to stand up for Li Tianlan, but not entirely. The divine list would be re-ranked next year. She challenged Gu Xingyun to increase her ranking. The higher her ranking was, the more samsara would gain after destroying Night Spirit. Otherwise, who would be willing to destroy Night Spirit only to benefit others in the end after all the hard work? From the perspective of Zhongzhou State, the academics may secretly instigate the decisive battle between Samsara and Gu Xingyun. Gu Xingyun dares to fight, but he will not easily fight to the death. The inside story behind the upcoming battle is complicated. Wang Tianzong sighed softly. Even though he was the Sword Emperor of Zhongzhou State, it was difficult for him to grasp the specific trend of the general trend until the truth came to light. The academics secretly instigated? The master of Samsara Palace is not stupid. She is seriously injured. Does she really think that Gu Xingyun, the fourth on the divine list, is just a decoration? Lin Fengting frowned subconsciously. Wang Qinzong glanced at him and chuckled. Don't forget that her surname used to be Gu. Her surname used to be Gu, but she mastered the unique skill of the Li family. Lin Fengting's eyes lit up. I'm going to Huading to watch the fun. I don't know how many overseas Invincible Realm experts want to watch the battle. Do you want to go and have a look? It's okay to stay for one more month, right? Wang Tianzong looked at Lin Fengting and said with a smile. Okay. Lin Fengting hesitated for a while and finally said excitedly, you go and arrange it first. I'll wait for you at the foot of the mountain. Wang Tianzong nodded and took a step forward. Then he disappeared instantly. Lin Fengting sat there and smoked a cigarette quietly. When it was almost time, he picked up the fishing rod and shook it casually. There was no fish on the hook. But the water of the entire carefree pool rose with the movement of his hand. A large amount of water rushed to the sky dozens of meters high in the twinkling of an eye, like a water curtain. The water curtain was clear and sparkling in the sunlight. Lin Fengting's figure stayed in the water curtain for a while and then disappeared in an instant. The water in the pool suddenly fell, splashing, and the rumbling sound echoed in the mountains. A sigh floated in the deafening sound of the water, vague and clear. Chapter 120. Once the course of the Sky Academy began, it would not be stopped because of other things. There were 13 courses, 1 class a day, and 2 classes a month without interruption. At the end of the month, the Academy would draw up the curriculum for the next month and send it to every student on the first day of the month. Because of the different classes, the order of the curriculum was not exactly the same. In a month, after 2 rounds of lessons, it was time for the drill. The maneuver would last 2 days during the first month, and the maneuver would last 3 days during the first month. The content of the maneuver was also varied. It could be an internal confrontation, a timed competition, or a confrontation with other Secret Service agencies outside the Academy, or the elites of various theaters of operations. It was tense, intense, compact, and intense. Every student's fate could be changed after a maneuver. In the past decades of the Sky Academy, because of a seemingly ordinary maneuver, some people amazed the world with a single brilliant feat, while others failed to recover. Such examples could be found everywhere. In the dark world and the special warfare system, which were outside the law and morality, there were ups and downs. Behind the winner was not only honor and disgrace, but also endless blood and despair. This was the case for the regular drill once a month, and even more so for the major drill once every 3 months. The major maneuver was different from ordinary competitions. The ranking of each maneuver would be recorded in the students' files. The scale of this maneuver did not have to be large. The reason why it was called a major maneuver was that it involved the most important turning point for many students in the next 3 years: class assignment. In the big maneuver held once every 3 months, the top 50 students in the whole school would enter the top class led by Zhuang Huayang himself. Not to mention the principal's personal attention and occasional teaching, the 13 tutors of this class were the leaders of each subject group, which was the most valuable part of this class. In all the past major maneuvers, some people advanced and some people retreated. The winner did not dare to slack off and strive for the top, while the loser did not dare to give up and gritted his teeth to catch up. Competition. This was the core word of the Sky Academy and the everlasting atmosphere. After the actual combat class, Zhuang Huayang personally sent Li Tianlan back to the dormitory. He once said that in the Sky Academy, every injury could lead to the death of a genius or the disappearance of a genius. In such a high-intensity competitive atmosphere, talent and background were all fake. Only desperate efforts were real. After entering the Sky Academy, it might not end well if one worked hard, but if one didn't work hard, he would definitely not end well. Li Tianlan had wind and thunder veins. He had the exquisite bone. He had the heart of a heavenly king. There was a supreme inheritance. But none of that mattered here. Risking his life was the most important thing. After the ups and downs, he returned to the Sky Academy. With the end of the actual combat lesson, his mind seemed to be completely immersed in the Sky Academy. For 3 consecutive days. Interrogation meditation course. Li Tianlan got the first place and was rewarded with 10 credits. Information collection and analysis. Li Tianlan successfully passed the passing line and was rewarded with 1 credit. Firearms Control Course. Li Tianlan failed, so 2 credits were deducted. The news of Yang Mingjiang's mysterious disappearance in Gu Yunxia's office spread throughout the Sky Academy. Li Tianlan didn't think much about it and just immersed himself in his own world. The battle between the master of Samsara Palace and Gu Xingyun shook the whole dark world. Li Tianlan contacted Qin Weibai immediately. Qin Weibai, who looked much better, told Li Tianlan confidently that even if the master of Samsara Palace could not defeat Gu Xingyun, at least she would not lose. As for Situ Cangyue's challenge to Gu Qianchuan, Li Tianlan didn't ask at all. An expert on the divine list, even the last one on the divine list, had nothing to worry about when dealing with Gu Qianchuan, an invincible realm expert who could not even get on the holy list. He didn't want to. Li Tianlan didn't want to think about anything. After the actual combat course, Yang Mingjiang's condescending kick, Gu Yunxia's gloomy and resentful eyes, Wang Yuedong's pale and haggard face, Ning Chenxing, Li Beidian, Yu Qingyan and others who risked their lives. All these made him completely immersed in the Sky Academy. Samsara, Sai City, Kunlun City, the Wang family of Beihai, the general trend of Zhongzhou State, everything seemed to be leaving him. He didn't want to do anything anymore. With his strength he couldn't do anything. From the border to Huading, facing the first contact with the prosperous Zhongzhou State, Li Tianlan's heart was complicated like a spider web. He wanted to grasp the root of the problem at once, but all kinds of obstacles entangled him, making it difficult for him to move. Until now, everything in his heart had completely calmed down. It seemed that everyone was right. Now what he needed most was to grow. He could only grow. The first sentence of the invincible manual of the map of God of War was full of a kind of arrogance and arrogance. Only look at yourself, not the world. In the prosperous times, recalling this sentence again, Li Tianlan's heart was filled with mixed feelings, and his feelings became deeper. He began to make his own plan to plan the future of the East Emperor Palace. Samsara, Sai City, Dongqing clan, and the academics might give him some help in the future, but only the East Emperor Palace was his real and complete foundation. Although this foundation was shallow, it was the most suitable for him now. Among the 13 courses in the Sky Academy, except for the actual combat course, the other courses were 4 hours in the morning and 4 hours in the afternoon. The time after class was completely free. Li Tianlan's schedule according to this period could be said to be the limit. He got up at 3 in the morning and practiced the Buddhist incantation of 9 words of tribulation at 5:30. He practiced the 24 moves of sword from 5:30 to 7. He had breakfast. He had classes. He had lunch for half an hour. He meditated from 12 to 2 at noon. He had classes in the afternoon. He had dinner at 6:30 and went to the training ground. He spent an hour learning to shoot and another hour learning to drive. He had a break from 8:30 to 9:30. He accompanied Wang Yuetong, chatted with Li Beidian and Ning Qianxing, and talked about their future development of the East Emperor Palace. He meditated from 10 to 1 o'clock. Then he rested for 2 hours. He got up and practiced the shadow formula. Over and over again. This was most of his life for the next 3 years. Of course he did not go out to perform tasks, exercises and holidays. Li Tianlan would not deliberately pursue perfection. He allowed his plan to deviate, but he also had a bottom line in his heart, that was, the deviation could not exceed half an hour. So after the actual combat course, Li Tianlan suddenly became extremely busy. After Wang Yuetong slept for a whole day, she got up and took the potion given to her by the enchantress. Basically she was fine. She was just overexhausted and her injury was not serious. Li Tianlan was seriously injured, but under the stimulation of a whole set of immortality potions, his so-called serious injury was almost recovering every minute and second. This made him look a little pale, but he was always energetic. He had a plan and a goal. Personally, his goal was to reach the pseudo-invincible realm of the chi-controlling realm by the end of this year after thoroughly understanding the Buddhist incantation of 9 words, and then enter the ice-condensing realm. Within 3 years, he would reach the pseudo-invincible realm of the fire-flaming realm and be ready to break through to the thunder-shocking realm at any time. The academic's 10-year plan also needed his speed. In 10 years, it would take 7 years for him to enter the invincible realm from the thunder-shocking realm. He had talent and inheritance, so this time should not be too tight. As for the East Emperor Palace, in 3 years he also wanted to upgrade the East Emperor Palace, which was already a department-level institution, to an institution not inferior to the Thunder they joined now. This required massive military merits and connections, which were destined to be obtained in countless foreign missions. So, While he was improving his combat capability, he also made requests to Li Baidian, Ning Qianqing, and the others. Li Baidian and Ning Qianqing were now in the fire-flaming realm, so he hoped that they could advance one level a year. 3 years later, they would surpass the peak of the fire-flaming realm and reach the fulfillment realm. It would be best if they could enter the thunder-shocking realm. As for Wang Yuetong, Li Tianlan's requirements for her were similar to Li Baidian's. Although he did not know how long the little princess of the Wang family of Beihai could stay in the East Emperor Palace, she was his woman. It was always good to improve her strength. Yu Qingyan's martial arts was a standard heterodox method. It was powerful but not orthodox. Li Tianlan was going to consult Yu Donglai in person about her path. The plaque of the dormitory had been sent out of the Sky Academy. Yu Donglai, who had closed Yu's private home cuisine, was personally in charge of his new institution. Li Tianlan asked curiously. It was said that the address Qin Weibai chose for him was in the suburbs. It was a pity that he could not go out for the time being and could not have a look in person. Yi Huayu was Li Baiqian's martial niece. This beautiful girl was the kind that made people feel comfortable when they saw her. However, her relationship with Li Baidian was obviously a little complicated. Her growth was all in Li Baiqian's hands. Within 3 years, it would not be a problem for Yi Huayu to at least approach the peak of the fire-flaming realm. At the thought of this, Li Tianlan was full of pride and expectation. Although the number of people in the East Emperor Palace was small, none of them were useless. They were all elite soldiers. 3 years later, if they could really improve their strength according to the plan, as long as they had enough military merits, they would basically not encounter too much resistance to upgrade to the deputy governor level. A bright future was expected, which also made Li Tianlan more motivated. In the dead of night, in the woods not far from the dormitory area, the wind was whistling. With Li Tianlan as the center, a large amount of air around him was vibrating at a slow and constant speed. On the trees around him, the emerald green leaves were detached from the branches and leaves in the slightly twisted air and flew aimlessly. Li Tianlan stood where he was, motionless. 10 meters away, a shadow identical to Li Tianlan stood opposite him, also motionless. He held the information of the Buddhist incantation of 9 words that tribulation gave him and frowned slightly. The shadow also frowned. It was extremely lifelike. But this was the limit of what Li Tianlan could do now. In a few days, Li Tianlan had reached the basic level of the shadow formula. He could directly release a shadow and exchange positions with the shadow. This benefited from a lot of inspiration and understanding when he sorted out the half of the shadow formula for Wang Xiaoyao. Now his shadow could imitate some of his subtle movements, but that was all. Except that he could switch places with his shadow without anyone noticing. His shadow had no attack power at all. Naturally, it did not have the super explosive power of tribulation. What on earth went wrong? Li Tianlan frowned and thought hard. He tried again and again, and the vibration in the air gradually became faster. But in this way not only did it not work. Instead, the shadow 10 meters in front of him became fluctuating, as if it was going to disappear. Why do you have to be centered on yourself? Is this the invincible manual's I, the unique and supreme? A voice suddenly sounded above Li Tianlan. Tribulation appeared silently and slowly floated down in front of Li Tianlan. His whole body almost merged with the surrounding night in an instant. Li Tianlan was not surprised. When he came to the woods for the first time in the middle of the night, tribulation followed him. But these 2 days, seeing his efforts, tribulation had not spoken. Is it wrong? Li Tianlan looked at tribulation and asked seriously. I can't say it's wrong. Tribulation shook his head and said, it's just that the method is wrong. Without waiting for Li Tianlan to understand, he took another step forward. A shadow that was half transparent and only had arms filled with black gas appeared in front of Li Tianlan. Tribulation's body was still standing in front of Li Tianlan, side by side with the shadow. But in Li Tianlan's perception, tribulation had completely disappeared. In front of him there was only the shadow. Chapter 121. There is another chapter ahead. It was posted a minute ago. Don't miss it. In the chi-controlling realm, the air around you is not your vassal, but a part of your body. In other words, your body is a part of the air. When a sufficiently strong shadow appears, you actually don't exist before you switch positions. Whether it's in the eyes of your enemies or in your own heart, you don't exist. You're just air. Tribulation stood in front of Li Tianlan, but his voice drifted in the sky. To be more precise, when the shadow comes out, you become a domain. When the shadow comes out, you become a domain. The shadow is no longer a part of you, but you become a part of the shadow. You are not the one driving it, but it is the other way around. Tribulation's body seemed to have completely disappeared from Li Tianlan's perception. But in front of Li Tianlan, he and the shadow beside him raised their hands at the same time. A jet-black arm knife stretched out from his cuff. There was also a vague and sharp color on his shadow hand. Li Tianlan's scalp went numb. From the perspective of orthodox martial arts, the Buddhist incantation of 9 words could definitely be regarded as an unorthodox way, or even a crooked way. But the sharpness and treachery in it made everyone's scalp numb. "Forbid," Tribulation said softly. In an instant, the air and leaves around Li Tianlan twisted suddenly stopped in midair. As soon as this pseudo-invincible realm was formed, a not dazzling but extremely condensed killing intent rose up and instantly smashed Tribulation's domain. "Do you understand?" Tribulation asked. "If you want to imitate your movements with the shadow formula, you must understand this move of mine well. You should form a domain with your own body, break the domain with killing intent, and reach the peak. Only in this way can you have the strongest shadow and the strongest outbreak." Li Tianlan took a deep breath and said with a bitter smile, "After listening to Martial Uncle's words, I have some ideas, but I get nothing. It seems that I understand, but it seems that I don't." "Take your time." Tribulation seemed to give a rare smile. "Your current progress is very good. We still have time, don't worry." Li Tianlan nodded in silence and did not speak. The deep night spread high in the sky. The night filled the woods, the academy, the magnificent Yangtze River and the sea as far as the eye could see. 50 meters away, Lin Fengting stood silently on the canopy, drifting with the night wind. He looked more and more elegant and indifferent. Listening to the conversation between Tribulation and Li Tianlan, he chuckled and said, "This shadow is interesting. I don't understand his principle either. Tianzong, he said that his unique skill is the strongest outbreak. What do you think?" The martial arts of the Wang family of Beihai were also famous for their explosive force. Lin Fengting really wanted to see what Wang Tianzong's expression would be when he heard that his unique skill was the strongest explosive force. Wang Tianzong stood beside Lin Fengting and said calmly, "In terms of the instantaneous outbreak among those in the same realm, his Buddhist incantation of 9 words is indeed the strongest. It's not much worse than the sword of 6 paths of the Wang family of Beihai. He's far from it." It exploded in an instant. For a short period of time. The meaning seemed similar, but it was completely different. "I know what you mean." Lin Fengting smiled and nodded. "But what are the 9 secret words? The Buddhist incantation of 9 words of the Great Soaring Temple?" After 2 days in Huading, he still couldn't resist the temptation of seeing the current successor of the Li family, so he took Wang Tianzong to the Sky Academy. One of them ranked first on the divine list, and the other was an invincible realm expert who could beat up the second on the divine list. Sneaking into the Sky Academy was as easy as walking on flat ground, but it was unlikely that they would be discovered. The two originally wanted to find Li Tianlan directly according to the address they got from the enchantress. But as soon as they approached the residential area, Lin Fengting saw the target. In terms of appearance and figure, Li Tianlan was not very similar to Li Guangtu and Li Honghe in Lin Fengting's impression. But the spirit was exactly the same, so Lin Fengting confirmed his identity at first sight. It's a unique skill he created by himself. It is divided into 9 words: kill, kill, shadow, destroy, flash, split, restrict, defend, and escape. It's really extraordinary. Whether it's the pattern, momentum, or boldness, it has the atmosphere of entering the invincible realm. From the perspective of a killer, the Buddhist incantation of 9 words can be said to be an impeccable unique skill. But I guess it can't be completely perfected until he really enters the invincible realm. Wang Tianzong looked at Tribulation calmly through the night, and the meaning in his eyes was difficult to understand. "You should have seen this person. He used to be called Situ Wanjia, but now he's just Tribulation. He's the Lord of Shadow in the Dark World. He's famous." Situ Wanjia? Lin Fengting's eyes were in a trance, and a young man he saw beside Li Guangtu subconsciously emerged in his mind. That handsome and silent young man. "It's him," Lin Fengting sighed softly. "How did he become like this? He's the strongest assassin in Zhongzhou State and even in the Dark World. Why do you have so many emotions?" Wang Tianzong looked helpless. "The strongest assassin?" Lin Fengting chuckled and said, "I believe he's the strongest assassin in Zhongzhou State, but not in the Dark World, right? Who's the number 1 killer in the Dark World now? Although the pronunciation is similar to Tribulation, it's not the same person." It seems that his code name is Evil? Right? He's on the holy list. He's the strongest assassin in the dark world today. Wang Tianzong smiled and didn't comment. Let's take a closer look. Let's see how the little guy who followed my second brother back then is, and how my second brother's son is. Lin Fengting smiled and took a step forward. Dozens of meters away. Li Tianlan didn't notice it. Tribulation, who was talking to Li Tianlan, suddenly turned around. His eyes were like lightning shooting straight at Lin Fengting. There was nothing in his sight. Tribulation's eyes suddenly became sharper. He instinctively protected Li Tianlan behind him and took a step forward. Four almost invisible shadows instantly appeared in 4 directions: east, west, south, and north. His eyes narrowed and his deep and hoarse voice, like that of death, echoed in the jungle in an instant, layer upon layer. Stop. 2 armed knives stretched out directly from his cuffs. Before he finished a word, the forest in the courtyard hundreds of meters away suddenly became still. The sound of the wind disappeared. The forest that was originally full of vitality suddenly seemed to have turned into a lifelike but extremely pale landscape painting. Only the pure dark and cold killing intent was surging. Everything happened in an instant. In less than half a second, the armed knives in Tribulation's hands had suddenly sounded, and he slashed forward. Destroy. Destroy the mortals. Destroy the thunder invincible. Destroy all the gods and Buddhas. The air within a radius of hundreds of meters twisted crazily like never before. The forest, which was as quiet as a painting half a second ago, was instantly torn apart under the extreme killing intent. The air overlapped and spread suddenly. Tribulation had armed knives in his hands. The 4 shadows that occupied the 4 directions also had armed knives in their hands. As Tribulation moved, the armed knives in his hands did not move, but the armed knives in the hands of the 4 shadows were instantly thrown out. The target was clear, and they rushed directly to Lin Fengting's position. There was no wind or rain. Only the pure and violent killing intent rushed to Lin Fengting in the extremely twisted air, which seemed slow but was actually fast. The sky was high and the ocean was vast. It was the most fierce and resolute killing intent that filled the world. It was complete madness. The twisted air whistled past. In an instant, with Tribulation as the center, the forest within a radius of hundreds of meters collapsed. Countless broken trunks and leaves were mixed in the air and turned into powder. There was a large dazzling blank space in the forest. Tribulation's face was pale. This move obviously consumed a lot of his energy, but he still stood where he was and observed around motionlessly. His eyes grew colder and colder. It was calm in the forest. Tribulation narrowed his eyes and pulled Li Tianlan. A shadow appeared in his original position without any warning, and he had already taken Li Tianlan hundreds of meters away. The extremely twisted air finally eased a little. Lin Fengting and Wang Tianzong appeared quietly hundreds of meters away. They looked at each other and saw solemnity and seriousness in each other's eyes. This man, Lin Fengting was silent for a while and finally said, "Is he really the teenager who followed my second brother? Is he Situt Sangyue's younger brother?" Wang Tianzong nodded silently. He knew the title of the strongest assassin in Zhongzhou State, but the power of the move just now was somewhat beyond his expectation. Obviously, this unusual madman had been one step closer to this mysterious realm after failing to break through to the invincible realm. How far was he from the real invincible realm? In front of him was the end of the chi-controlling realm. Was there really a way? I didn't expect it. I didn't expect it. Lin Fengting took a deep breath and shook his head. There was a misunderstanding tonight. Who could have thought that the brat was so strong? If Tribulation enters the invincible realm in the future, given time, his final achievement may not be lower than yours and mine. This brat. He has no chance. Wang Tianzong said calmly. What? Lin Fengting looked stunned. Tribulation. Wang Tianzong thought for a while and said, he seems to be 38 years old this year? If he takes the ordinary path, he may have a chance to fight for the last time. But from the chi-controlling realm to the invincible realm, there is not enough time. There may not be a way for him to go. Lin Fengting suddenly fell silent. 38 years old. Entering the invincible realm directly from the chi-controlling realm. This was an unprecedented road of martial arts. It was not impossible to succeed. But did Tribulation really have time? The peak state of a martial artist was before the age of 40. Most of the real geniuses could enter the thunder-shocking realm before the age of 40. Among these geniuses, there were a few really amazing people who could enter the invincible realm at the age of 36 or 37. After the age of 40, the physical state might be maintained for a long time. But at this age it was almost impossible to move forward on martial arts even half a step. Tribulation was 38 years old. If he could not enter the invincible realm in the remaining 2 years, the corners of Lin Fengting's mouth moved. He thought of the quiet and handsome young man who followed his second brother many years ago. Thinking of the shocking blow with soaring murderous intent tonight, he felt a little suffocated for no reason. If such a person failed, it seemed to be a sad song for martial arts and all the assassins in the dark world, right? Is there no other way? Lin Fengting asked subconsciously. Yes. Wang Qianzong said calmly, but it's almost the same as nothing. And even if there are conditions, the hope of his success will not be too big. What conditions? Lin Fengting raised his eyebrows and asked. That's something like a legend. The martial arts stone, also known as the Wall of Luck. Wang Qianzong shook his head and looked at Lin Fengting, who looked confused as if he was listening to a book from heaven. He continued, it's also called the Imperial Jade Seal. Chapter 122. For the first time, Li Tianlan really saw the speed of tribulation, the most powerful assassin in Zhongzhou state. As the only person with double wind veins in hundreds of years, and his martial arts was an unprecedented road from the chi-controlling realm to the invincible realm, coupled with the shadow formula, Tribulation was simply a super assassin who specialized in breaking the balance. In the dark, he took Li Tianlan forward and backward, full of a sense of extreme violence and swiftness. The wind and the clouds were gone, like a white colt passing through a crack. Being pulled back by tribulation, Li Tianlan was in a trance and even felt suffocated. That was not the deterrence brought by absolute power, but the oppression caused by extreme speed. It was clear and obvious, making people nervous almost instinctively. Some things in front of him seemed to have completely disappeared. In the woods. In the night. Even tribulation had turned into a shadow of nothingness and then disappeared without a trace. There was only the sound of the fierce wind whistling wildly all over the world. He seemed to stand still, but the fierce and violent wind kept whistling in his ears, suppressing all his perceptions. Li Tianlan's consciousness was clearer than ever, but his perception was blurred. He couldn't tell forward or backward, and he couldn't tell the passage of time. The strong wind blew, and the branches and leaves in the woods wilted. There seemed to be a storm sweeping through the whole woods, like a knife chopping forward. All the obstacles were swept into the sky in the storm, and then smashed to pieces. There seemed to be a flash of light in front of him, and then it became dark again. The world was silent. The sound of the wind suddenly disappeared. Li Tianlan suddenly came to his senses in an extreme trance, only to find that he was standing outside the dormitory. Martial uncle. Li Tianlan had already guessed all this, so he didn't feel puzzled and shouted subconsciously. "It's okay." Tribulation's voice seemed to be a little weak, and the hoarseness and low in his tone faded a little. "Let's call it a night. Sleep more and continue tomorrow." Li Tianlan finally couldn't help his curiosity and took the initiative to ask, "Martial uncle, was someone watching us in the dark just now?" Li Tianlan now had all the three most precious constitutions in the dark world. Although his martial arts had been recultivated, his perception had not regressed. He had a sensitivity far beyond his current realm to everything around him. But even so, Li Tianlan didn't notice anything unusual just now. This could only mean that the realm of the person in the dark was far beyond his current imagination. Invincible realm? Invincible in the invincible realm? Two people. After a moment of silence, Tribulation said faintly, "But they don't mean us any harm. At least in the Sky Academy, they have no intention of attacking us. But I can't stay in that place for too long. Next time I'll change to another place. I'll find an empty training ground and continue practicing the 9 words incantation." Li Tianlan nodded but showed it to the shadow. Tribulation's figure had disappeared without a trace. Li Tianlan swiped his card and entered the room. Looking at his watch, he found it was nearly 5 o'clock in the morning. He hesitated for a moment and finally walked into the bedroom. A faint fragrance floated in the bedroom, stirring one's mind. Wang Yuetong kicked the quilt again. Her fair and tender body seemed to be suffused with an enchanting luster in the dark. It was indistinct, but the visual impact was great. Sleep naked. This was not Wang Yuetong's habit, but it was Li Tianlan's request. Whether it was in front of Qin Weibai or Wang Yuetong, Li Tianlan seemed to be domineering in bed, which made the two goddesses feel wronged and enjoyed at the same time. Now he was living with Wang Yuetong openly. Every night after they went to bed, he would strip the little princess naked and hold her in his arms. That feeling was indescribably comfortable. At first, the little princess was not used to it and wanted to disobey. As a result, after Li Tianlan tore 2 sets of expensive sexy silk underwear, she could only let him do as he pleased. But these were nothing. What Wang Yuetong couldn't stand most was that Li Tianlan would strip her naked every night. The two of them would share a quilt and rest on the long pillow that Wang Yuetong deliberately selected, but he would do nothing. Such behavior was really worse than a beast. Whether Li Tianlan had no time or something else, the little princess was not going to accept any explanation from Li Tianlan. So for several days Wang Yuetong looked at Li Tianlan with more and more resentment and melancholy. Li Tianlan smiled and lowered his head to kiss Wang Yuetong's face. Then he got up and sat on the bed. Instead of resting, he began to meditate. Any martial arts, no matter how unconventional and bizarre it was in the final analysis, was nothing more than attaching equal importance to realm and unique skills. Now that he had 2 hours less time to practice unique skills, Li Tianlan didn't want to waste it, so he simply used it in meditation as a rest. In 3 years, from the chi-controlling realm to the peak of the fire-flaming realm, he had crossed 3 pseudo-invincible realms in a row, and he had thoroughly grasped the Buddhist incantation of 9 words. This was the goal Li Tianlan set for himself. Once this goal was achieved, he wouldn't have too many opponents under the invincible realm even without entering the thunder-shocking realm. He would also have the formal qualification to play in the general trend of Zhongzhou state. Time was pressing and Li Tianlan had to fight desperately. The darkness on the horizon gradually brightened. In extreme concentration, Li Tianlan felt someone kissing him on the face. He opened his eyes and saw Wang Yuetong's beautiful face in front of him. She said with a smile, "Good morning, senior brother. Why are you back so early today?" "I didn't gain much, so I didn't waste time and came back to meditate." Li Tianlan shook his head casually and touched Wang Yuetong's hair. He didn't tell her what he had encountered in the woods not long ago, but calmly said, "Is today the sniping class?" Wang Yuetong nodded, picked up her underwear and put it on. She giggled and said, "Senior brother, don't worry. I have an uncle who is in charge of this class. Even if you fail, I won't deduct your credits. Senior brother is really unlucky. It's easy to play with a gun. I'll teach you another day." Li Tianlan gave a wry smile and nodded. The only thing he hadn't learned since he was a child was to play with a gun. There were many guns in the border camp, but bullets were quite expensive. No matter how much his grandfather wanted him to stand out, he was unwilling to use precious bullets to cultivate his marksmanship. As for blank bullets, they were even rarer than live bullets. Li Tianlan had never seen blank bullets since he was a child. In yesterday's firearms control course, because it was the first class, the course was relatively simple. Instructor Wang Xiaojie talked about some theories about firearms. For most of the students, these were the same old stuff. After the theory, there was a lot more, mainly pistols and assault rifles. Li Tianlan's results in the practice of these 2 kinds of firearms could be described as a mess. Not only did he fail, but he was also the only one among the 50 students who failed in the firearms control course. The instructor of the firearms control class, Wang Xiaojie, was also Gu Yunxia's confidant, but he didn't deliberately embarrass Li Tianlan. He just deducted 1 credit from him and Li Tianlan was willing to deduct it. Wang Yuetong, who won the first place in the firearms control class, also got a reward of 8 credits. It seemed to be a very fair class, and the instructor didn't take any position. This kind of environment was undoubtedly Li Tianlan's favorite. He stood up from the bed, moved his body and suddenly asked, "Is the headmaster back?" Zhuang Huayang had not come back since he went to Yuzhou a few days ago. Although the news from Yuzhou was not bad for Zhuang Huayang, Li Tianlan always felt a little uneasy if he didn't return to the Sky Academy. He killed Gu Changjiang. If Zhuang Huayang was involved in this matter, it was definitely not a situation Li Tianlan wanted to see. "No." Wang Yuetong whispered, "I called second uncle yesterday. Second uncle said that the president held another meeting of the decision-making committee yesterday, specifically for the Sky Academy. There may be some personnel changes in the Sky Academy. He asked you to pay attention to some things." My father was also invited to the meeting of the decision-making committee, but he was too lazy to go, so he declined. Li Tianlan chuckled. There were personnel changes in the Sky Academy, but it was Wang Xiaoyao who asked him to pay attention to some things. This was really interesting. He might be just an ant in Wang Tianzong's eyes. But in Wang Xiaoyao's eyes, he was an out-and-out rival in love. From this point of view, Wang Xiaoyao had more reason to hate him than anyone in the Wang family of Beihai. This reminder might not be in good faith. Let's eat first. Li Tianlan got out of bed and said casually. No matter what the so-called changes in the Sky Academy meant, Li Tianlan didn't intend to think too much about it. These things were not what he could think about now. Even if he had an idea, it wouldn't affect anything. His phone suddenly rang. Li Tianlan was stunned and looked at the number. It turned out to be Dongqing Qiuqi, who hadn't taken the initiative to contact him since he returned to Huading. He narrowed his eyes slightly, picked up the phone and called Sister Qiuqi with a smile. At the same time, the figure of Zhuang Huayang, the headmaster of the Sky Academy, appeared on the river opposite the academy. Beside him, a young man and a young woman followed in silence. The man was strong and burly like a giant god, full of pressure. The woman was extremely beautiful, but her every move revealed a kind of indifferent and obvious dangerous aura, looking strange and cold. The first disciple of Jade Pool, giant god Su Chu. By Yuming, the nominal disciple of Jade Pool. At the same time, a transfer order from Kunlun City also appeared on the desks of the headmaster's office, the vice headmaster's office, the teaching office, and the political department of the Sky Academy. Yi Fengqing, the director of the political department of the Sky Academy, was transferred to the director of the Special Operations Bureau of Huading and enjoyed the treatment of a governor. Tribulation, the deputy director of the teaching office of the Sky Academy and the leader of the assassination course group, served as the director of the political department and concurrently served as the leader of the assassination course group. Bai Yuming, the deputy commander of the 2nd Reconnaissance Brigade of the Thunderbolt Battalion of the Border Praetorian Corps, was transferred to the Sky Academy and served as the leader of the actual combat course group. Among the personnel transfers one after another, the last personnel appointment was a great surprise, which also showed that Kunlun City still didn't give up on the Sky Academy. Lu Shiyuan, the director of the Curtin Intelligence Department of Huading, joined the Sky Academy and served as the deputy director of the teaching office of the Sky Academy. At the same time, as the world's largest country, Zhongzhou State issued a statement to the entire dark world. June 15. On the day of the battle between the master of Samsara Palace and the governor of Kunlun City, Zhongzhou State would fully respect the opinions of the two parties, but it also suggested that the two parties should make peace and not go too far. On June 15, the Sky Academy would be open to the public for one day. At that time, representatives of the superpowers were also welcome to come to the Sky Academy to watch the battle, and the government of Zhongzhou State would send special people to pick them up. Special people would be sent to pick them up. Just this sentence alone showed the euphemistic and strong attitude of Zhongzhou State. The news that Zhongzhou State welcomed representatives of the major dark forces to come to the Sky Academy to watch the battle had different meanings in different people's minds. People who didn't understand the situation of Zhongzhou State instinctively thought that Gu Xingyun, the god of war of Zhongzhou State and the fourth on the world divine list, had already won the battle. He wanted to increase the influence of the special warfare system of Zhongzhou State in the dark world by defeating or even killing the master of Samsara Palace. But only people who really understood the delicate situation of Zhongzhou State knew. Chapter 123. The Sky Academy acted quickly. Li Tianlan and the others had already received the news when they went to the sniper class. At the same time, the personnel transfer of the Sky Academy had also spread throughout the academy. Yi Fengqing, Tribulation, Lu Shiyuan, Bai Yuming. From behind these people, it was not difficult to see the advance and retreat and attitude of several groups in Zhongzhou State in the Sky Academy. The transfer of Tribulation, Yi Fengqing, and even Bai Yuming was undoubtedly a hidden cooperation between the academics, the giant group, and the Wang family of Beihai. As for Lu Shiyuan joining the Sky Academy, it was a big move by the Special Warfare Group to try to run the teaching office and help the extremely passive Gu Yunxia to reverse the situation. However, it was obvious that this seemingly wonderful move of Kunlun City was a big bad move. On the surface, Lu Shiyuan's position could not be changed for the time being. But in private, Li Tianlan's vicious dog joined the teaching office. In a sense, he could already grasp some of the situation in the teaching office through Lu Shiyuan. Plus, there was tribulation in the political department. He could be said to be his own people in the real sense, far from the cooperative relationship with Zhuang Huayang. Li Tianlan's foundation in the Sky Academy was finally stabilized. In front of the general trend of Zhongzhou State and even the Dark World, he was now as small as an ant. But at least in the Sky Academy, Li Tianlan was already qualified to join this game. Lu Shiyuan, Lu Dongyu. Perhaps neither Gu Yunxia nor Gu Yulan would have thought that this pair of father and daughter was equivalent to a magnifying glass that Li Tianlan put beside them. Most of their moves would be secretly observed by Li Tianlan. Now Li Tianlan's foundation was still shallow, but his momentum had begun to take shape. Compared with his shallow foundation, his strength was his biggest shortcoming. The new instructor of the actual combat lesson turned out to be a nominal disciple of Jade Pool. Chenxing, is he from your border control corps? How about it? Do you understand? On the school bus, Li Beidian, who was sitting in the last row, looked at the announcement on his wristwatch and asked casually. Bai Yuming, the first miss of the Bai family, is said to be named by Great Master Wu Wei. She is also one of Great Master Wu Wei's nominal disciples. Hua Qingfeng, the head of the Shadow Sect, who ranks 10th among the top 10 contemporary experts in Zhongzhou State, seems to have a teacher-student relationship with her. She has a special status in Jade Pool. Although she is only a nominal disciple, her treatment is no different from that of a lineal disciple. She mainly practices floating life sword rain and flying fire meteor sword. She has the strength in the stabilization phase of the thunder-shocking realm. Ning Chenxing opened the window of the school bus, lit a cigarette and said calmly. There were a few people from other dormitories who were going to class with them. Looking at the smell of smoke in the carriage, no one said anything. The people closest to them quietly stood up and moved further away from them. Ning Chenxing calmly stubbed out the cigarette butt and looked at Li Tianlan, wanting to say something but stopping on second thought. What? Is there anything I can't say? Li Tianlan noticed Ning Chenxing's gaze and said casually with a smile. I'm afraid Bai Yuming has bad intentions this time. Ning Chenxing hesitated and looked at Wang Yuetong. The little princess had put her arm around Li Tianlan's neck, bit his ear and said, Qianqing is the confidant of Marshal Dongqing, so he can't say some gossip. Bai Yuming is the niece of Bai Qingqian, the current secretary of Guangdong province, and also Marshal Dongqing's niece. In terms of reputation, Bai Yuming can even be as famous as second uncle. Marshal Dongqing and Bai Qingqian seem to have a bad relationship these years, especially Bai Qingqian and the old master of the Dongqing clan. Bai Yuming naturally wants to help her aunt. Old Master Dongqing thinks highly of you, but Bai Qingqian doesn't like you, especially when they are members of the Bai family. The Bai family, the Zhou family, and the Dongqing clan are the backbone of the giant group of Zhongzhou State. The Dongqing clan values you, but if the Bai family doesn't like you, the Dongqing clan, especially the marshal, will be in a difficult position. Li Tianlan's expression was calm. If that was the case, not only Dongqing Wudi would be in a difficult position, but even he himself would be in a difficult position. Most of the time, the enemy who was not the enemy was the most troublesome. If Bai Yuming really made him uncomfortable, how to fight back without destroying the relationship between the giant group was what Li Tianlan had to consider. After all, no matter what the Dongqing clan was planning, at least they were treating him well now. But it is said that Dongqing Qiuqi and Bai Yuming have a very good relationship. This may be a breakthrough. Wang Yuetong continued to give Li Tianlan ideas. Let's take one step at a time. Things may not be what we think. Li Tianlan smiled lightly, but a trace of contemplation flashed in his eyes. After the master of Samsara Palace and the governor of Sai City respectively challenged two invincible realm experts of Kunlun City, the mobilization of the Sky Academy was quickly announced to the public. The mobilization involved 4 people: Yi Fengqing, Tribulation, Bai Yuming, and Lu Shiyuan. Yi Fengqing represented the Wang family of Beihai. Bai Yuming showed the intention of the giant group to intervene in the Sky Academy. Lu Shiyuan entered the teaching office, representing Gu Xingyun's face. Even if the god of war of Zhongzhou State compromised, he must need a fig leaf. Lu Shiyuan was the fig leaf. In secret, the task force that had gone to Huading to investigate the cause of Gu Changjiang's death and Yang Mingjiang's disappearance had secretly withdrawn to Yuzhou. This was a real compromise. It didn't mean that Gu Xingyun gave up investigating the truth. It could only mean that he had no time to care about other things for the time being. For Li Tianlan, the longer the better. Giving Gu Xingyun a fig leaf to cover up his embarrassment was allowed by all parties. Tribulation represented Sai City's right to speak in the Sky Academy. Sai City and the academics were allies, but allies and their own people were two completely different concepts. In this way, in terms of the result, the Wang family of Beihai, the giant group, and Sai City gained something from the deal led by the academics. Only the academics got nothing. How could it be a situation where they got nothing? Li Tianlan was not surprised, but he clearly smelled the aura of power again. Crippling Zhong Xiaofeng, killing Gu Changjiang, besieging Yang Mingjiang, killing Su Yunzong. At this moment, Li Tianlan suddenly realized that he seemed to have inadvertently pushed something forward. The aura of power was so obvious that it had almost reached the point where he was about to hit his face. Obscure, intense, the storm was about to rise and the mountain rain was about to come. June 15th. There was less than a month and a half left. What on earth was the academics planning? He took a deep breath and his eyes grew quieter. In the general trend he was just a nobody, but he inadvertently became a very key pawn. Many things were beyond his control and he couldn't control them. Should he go with the flow or go against the trend? Go against the trend? Li Tianlan repeated the word silently in his heart and shook his head with a wry smile. How could he have the qualification to go against the trend? Senior brother, what are you thinking about? Wang Yuetong asked softly, looking at Li Tianlan, who had been silent for a long time and thoughtful. I'm thinking about the sniper class later. Li Tianlan came to his senses and said casually with a smile. In the dark world, no matter how brilliant an individual's martial strength was, marksmanship could never be ignored. After entering the fire-flaming realm, ordinary bullets were no longer a threat, but some special firearms with special bullets were still very threatening. 1 or 2 shots might not be a problem, but more shots could also kill one. The Sky Academy divided the firearms course into firearms control and sniper class, which was enough to show the importance the academy attached to this aspect. Purely comparing these two courses, the importance of sniper class was definitely above that of firearms control. Sniper class emphasized both theory and actual combat, and it was divided into battlefield sniper and special sniper. Wang Tianqing, the instructor of the course, was a master of marksmanship. This instructor, who came from a branch of the Wang family of Beihai, had limited talent in martial arts, and even had no hope of entering the thunder-shocking realm in his life. But in terms of marksmanship he was a real genius. He was good at making and modifying guns and he used all kinds of guns wonderfully. He was no worse than Wang Xiaojie, the leader of the firearms course group. It was said that Wang Tianqing was good at using an extremely ferocious-looking heavy sniper. Although he was only in the fire-flaming realm with a heavy sniper in hand, it was enough to make most of the thunder-shocking realm experts' scalps numb. It was almost his limit to play with guns to this extent. Even in Li Tianlan's heart, even if his level of ordinary firearms was a little worse, he would strive to be the best in the sniper class no matter what. Don't worry, senior brother. It's okay. I'll talk to my uncle later. Even if you fail, your credits won't be deducted, Wang Yuetong said with a smile. It could be seen that she was very familiar with Wang Tianqing. I'll accompany you to the shooting range tonight. I'm very good at sniping. I'll teach you. Li Tianlan glanced at her with a smile and nodded. Although Wang Tianqing was from a branch of the Wang family of Beihai, he was a very important one in the whole Wang family of Beihai. As the chief instructor of sniper tactics in the Wang family of Beihai, he was a well-deserved high-level official in the Wang family of Beihai. Wang Yuetong's marksmanship might even have been taught by Wang Tianqing himself. The school bus arrived at the teaching building. Li Tianlan and the others got off the bus and rushed to the classroom in silence. The classroom of the sniper class was located on the 3rd floor. There were few students around Li Tianlan who arrived on time. The whole teaching building was quiet. They were about to turn the corner on the 3rd floor. A calm and gentle voice suddenly came from the corner on the 4th floor. Big guy, you're a freshman. You should get to know the situation of the school first, especially in your class. Everyone is the best in the school. Even if you're strong, you should keep a low profile. You can think about other things after you figure out the situation. Do you understand? Yes. A deep, thunderous voice responded, quiet and resolute. The calm and gentle voice continued, in this class, you should pay attention to 2 people. You'd better not provoke them now or in the future. One is Gu Yulan, the direct disciple of the first elder of Kunlun City. The other is Li Tianlan. He's a person that even the headmaster thinks highly of. He's cruel and merciless. If you fall into his hands, no matter who you are, you won't necessarily have a good ending. Li Tianlan subconsciously stood where he was, a little stunned. He didn't expect that he had such a fierce reputation in the Sky Academy now. Footsteps came down from upstairs. A middle-level leader of the teaching office accompanied a man in his 30s and slowly went downstairs. Li Tianlan finally realized the meaning of the word big guy. How could he be a big guy? He was simply a little giant. He was nearly 2 meters tall, with a rock-like appearance and explosive muscles. His momentum was like a mountain and a raging fire, calm and fierce. Li Tianlan's pupils shrank subconsciously. He felt the power that was almost blowing on his face and his heart became heavy. Is this a freshman? A freshman who just came to report? The teacher who accompanied the big guy also saw Li Tianlan. He suddenly froze and thought of what he had just said. He didn't know whether Li Tianlan heard it or not. He felt a little guilty at first. He stopped and said with a smile, "Tianlan, you're here for class?" "Hello, teacher." Li Tianlan greeted him with a warm smile. The teacher nodded and continued to walk to the classroom with the big guy. The big guy took a step forward, then stopped abruptly. "Are you Li Tianlan?" he asked, his eyes falling directly on Li Tianlan. It was not a hostile tone, but the natural sense of oppression made Li Tianlan subconsciously straighten his body. "I am," Li Tianlan said calmly. The big guy took a deep breath. The next second he quickly walked down the stairs and walked directly toward Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan's body shook. But the big guy in front of him suddenly knelt on one knee in front of Li Tianlan. His burly body, which was almost 150 kilograms but not fat, knelt down, and the whole corridor seemed to shake with him. The big guy's rock-like face slowly lowered and he said in a deep voice, "Su Chu pays respect to young Master Tianlan." Everyone was dumbfounded. Chapter 124. For the first time, Li Tianlan experienced the so-called feeling of having a tiger's body tremble and a follower kowtow. Pleasure and so on were completely bullshit. The inexplicable feeling of astonishment was all he felt now. Young Master Tianlan? He seems to be calling me, but when did I become a young master? He was 100% sure that he had never seen this majestic giant before. A person he had never met suddenly knelt in front of him. This feeling was really a little indescribable. Li Tianlan had no time to think. The moment the giant in front of him knelt down, he instinctively squatted down and tried to help him up. But the giant's strength was so great and his attitude was even more resolute. He knelt on one knee with great strength. Li Tianlan was caught off guard and could only follow him to kneel on one knee. "Young master, no." Su Chu's expression changed greatly. He had been kneeling on one knee, but this time he simply put both knees on the ground. He bent down and was about to kowtow to Li Tianlan. The feeling of full strength still impacted everyone. At this moment, Li Tianlan even felt that with Su Chu's strength, this kowtow was enough to smash the entire corridor. "Stop, stop, stop." Li Tianlan finally came to his senses. He pressed Su Chu's big head and said with the corner of his mouth twitching, "Who are you?" They were dumbfounded. Everyone was dumbfounded. The scene in front of them was too strange. Not only Li Tianlan, but also the teacher of the teaching office who Su Chu went to the classroom opened his mouth wide and could not come to his senses for a long time. "I'm Su Chu." Su Chu looked at Li Tianlan and introduced himself seriously, but the content was extremely empty, which made Li Tianlan even more puzzled. "Aunt Bai asked me to take care of you, young master." He grinned. When he didn't smile, Su Chu gave people an extremely tough feeling. But once he smiled, he looked a little simple and honest. "Young master, I can cook, drive, fight. Eldest senior brother?" Ning Qianqing finally came to his senses in this strange scene. Looking at Su Chu kneeling in front of Li Tianlan, the corner of his mouth twitched and he cried out in disbelief, "Why did you go down the mountain?" "Aunt Bai asked me to come." Su Chu looked at Ning Qianqing with a smile. His eyes were soft and he slowly stopped smiling. The simple and honest look on him faded quickly, leaving only a kind of fierceness full of surging power. "Aunt Bai?" Hearing this title again, Li Tianlan subconsciously froze and asked tentatively, "Is it Secretary Bai Qingqian?" Su Chu nodded and looked at Li Tianlan with increasingly kind eyes. It was a kind of respect that came from the bottom of his heart, and it could even be said to be pious. Li Tianlan felt his scalp go numb. Wang Yuetong just told him that Bai Qingqian and Old Master Dongqing had a big conflict. Under normal circumstances, Old Master Dongqing liked him. It was good enough that Bai Qingqian didn't vent her anger on him. How could she send this fierce person from Jade Pool to take care of him? Eldest senior brother. Then he would be the first disciple of the Jade Pool. His status was absolutely extraordinary. However, judging from Su Chu's current expression, it was clear that he regarded himself as a servant. The word young Master Tianlan had fully demonstrated his concept of hierarchy. What else did Secretary Bai say? Li Tianlan asked. He was a little confused. There were some problems that he couldn't figure out even if he wanted to think about it. For example, the attitude of the Dongqing clan toward him and Bai Qingqian's intention. For Li Tianlan, these were all mysteries. Su Chu wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. Finally, he scratched his big head and said honestly, "Young master, you'd better ask Elder Yuming." Bai Yuming was a nominal disciple of Jade Pool. Her seniority was relatively vague, but now she was the youngest elder of the thunder-shocking realm in Jade Pool. Her status was still very distinguished. He and Bai Yuming came to the Sky Academy at the same time. Bai Qingqian did say something. Before they came to Huading, the extraordinary woman in the political circle of Zhongzhou State bluntly said that old Master Dongqing was unfathomable and scheming. She told Li Tianlan to be careful not to fall into a trap or be doomed eternally. These words were absolutely straightforward, but Dongqing Wudi was Su Chu's youngest martial uncle. Now that he was asked to speak ill of his martial uncle's father, he couldn't do it anyway. It was better to let Elder Hades do it. Li Tianlan shook his head and stood up. He took the opportunity to pull Su Chu up and said, "Let's go to class first or we'll be late." He didn't know what to do with Su Chu. Bai Qingqian's attitude was even weirder than that of the Dongqing clan. No matter how to deal with this matter, he planned to let Dongqing Wudi know first and see what he thought before deciding what to do. Okay. Su Chu nodded, stood up and stamped his feet casually. He didn't seem to use much strength, but the whole corridor trembled slightly. Li Tianlan and others could even clearly hear the slight trembling of the glass in the nearby classrooms. Such strength was really like lifting up a mountain. The corner of Li Tianlan's eyes twitched. Even if he were blind, he could see that the eldest disciple of Jade Pool in front of him not only had the thunder vein, but also had the kind of thunder vein that had grown to a certain extent. With such divine power, he would be a brave general wherever he was. Li Tianlan looked at the teacher of the teaching office standing beside him with a weird expression, nodded and said, "Sorry to trouble you, teacher. It's my duty. This is all my job." The teacher smiled and said in a more cautious tone, "After killing Lu Xiaowei and Su Yunzong, at least in the Sky Academy, Li Tianlan was no longer a nobody. Even the whole East Emperor Palace was notorious. He was a thorn in the eyes of Director Gu Yunxia of the teaching office and a delicious cake in the eyes of the headmaster. Among this year's freshmen, Li Tianlan and his members of East Emperor Palace were one of the people who couldn't be ignored. Even most of the teachers of the academy should maintain some basic respect for such a figure." Li Tianlan watched the teacher of the teaching office leave with Su Chu and subconsciously narrowed his eyes. In that case, the arrival of Bai Yuming is a good thing for senior brother. Wang Yuatong was silent for a while and took the initiative to speak. Too many so-called good things may not really be a good thing, especially these things come too inexplicably. Li Tianlan shook his head and looked at Ning Qianqing. Ning Qianqing's identity was similar to Su Chu's. They were both disciples of Jade Pool. The former was sent to him by Dongqing Wudi, while the latter was sent by Bai Qingqian. What did this couple, who were said to be incompatible with each other, want to do? I don't know much about first senior brother. Seeing Li Tianlan's eyes, Ning Qianqing shook his head slightly. I just heard that he was picked up by the old master of the Bai family many years ago and then sent to Jade Pool. It can be said that he is half a member of the Bai family. He is the pro-disciple of martial uncle master of the sect. He rarely goes down the mountain since he was a child, so he is not famous. How's his strength? Li Tianlan asked softly. Very strong. Ning Qianqing's eyes flickered subconsciously. He should be at the fulfillment of the fire-flaming realm now, but his combat capability is close to that of an expert in the stabilization phase of the thunder-shocking realm. He has the thunder vein and is born with divine power. In terms of pure strength, few people in the whole Jade Pool can be stronger than first senior brother. First senior brother mainly practices prairie burning sword storm and wind and thunder sword. At least in terms of pure strength, his strength can be said to be the peak of the fire-flaming realm. Li Tianlan was suddenly moved. Even Li Beidian and Wang Yuatong changed their expressions slightly. A super expert whose combat capability was close to the stabilization phase of the thunder-shocking realm was a core figure among the teachers of the Sky Academy. Why did such a person come to the Sky Academy as a freshman? There was no shortage of very old freshmen in the Sky Academy. In their class, there was a 35-year-old freshman who was the deputy director of the Special Operations Bureau of a sub-provincial city in the south. These people who held public office came to the Sky Academy to be gilded. Su Chu did not hold any public office, but he was extremely strong. There was no need for such a person to be gilded. Is he really a servant? Let's go to class first. Li Tianlan thought silently for a while, but he couldn't figure out the main point. He shook his head and took the lead to the classroom. Tianlan. Tribulation's deep and hoarse voice suddenly sounded. A shadow suddenly appeared in the corridor. Before the shadow was completely formed, Tribulation had already switched places with the shadow and stood in front of Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan was suddenly stunned. Looking at Tribulation, who looked normal, He raised his eyebrows and said, "Martial uncle, what's the matter? Come with me. I'll take you to see someone." Tribulation spoke slowly in a solemn tone. "Teacher Bai Yuming? But now it's the sniper class." A name came to Li Tianlan's mind, and then he became a little hesitant. "It's not her." Tribulation said indifferently, "It's Dongqing Qiuqi. Don't worry about the course. I've already asked for leave for you." The leave application approved by the headmaster has been in the hands of teacher Wang Tianqing. Li Tianlan was more confused. Dongqing Qiuqi just called him in the morning. The sister who was now a member of the standing committee of Huading didn't say anything about meeting him. Why did she suddenly come to the Sky Academy? He looked at the other members of the East Emperor Palace. Tribulation's eyes also fell on Wang Yuetong and the others with Li Tianlan. "You," Tribulation said slowly, "except for the little princess, everyone's leave application has been approved. I guess someone will come to you in a while." He paused for a moment before continuing, "Take care, everyone." Tribulation turned around and walked to the stairs. "Master Tribulation," Li Badian shouted subconsciously with a puzzled look on his face. Tribulation had already gone downstairs without looking back. Li Tianlan exchanged a look with them and followed Tribulation downstairs. In the corridor, Li Badian and Ning Qianqing looked at each other and then said, "It seems that none of you has asked for leave, did we?" "Obviously we were asked for leave," Ning Qianqing said expressionlessly. "That means we don't have to go to class?" Li Tianlan clicked his tongue and said, "Why do I feel that something big is going to happen?" Wang Yuetong stood there quietly, deep in thought. A footstep hurried upstairs. A staff member of the teaching office in military uniform, about 40 years old, ran upstairs. He was slightly stunned when he saw Li Badian and the others standing in the corridor in a daze. Li Badian, Ning Qianqing, Yi Huayu, Yu Qingyan. The middle-aged man called several names and then said, "Are you all here?" "Yes," Li Badian said calmly. The middle-aged man breathed a sigh of relief and said with a smile, "Well, your leave application has been approved by the headmaster. Come with me. Someone wants to see you." "Teacher, can you tell us who wants to see us?" Ning Qianqing frowned slightly and asked in a low voice. "It's Leader Bai of the actual combat lesson. And Leader Enchantress of the camouflage and lurking lesson." "Bai Yuming and Enchantress?" They were stunned again. "Teacher, what about our leave application?" Li Badian asked casually. "It's been approved." The middle-aged man's smile remained unchanged. "The headmaster personally approved it." "How long?" Li Badian's eyes gradually sharpened and he asked closely. The middle-aged man lowered his eyelids and said calmly, "About 40 days. It had been less than a week since the Sky Academy officially started, and Zhuang Huayang had approved a leave application for 40 days. What was going on? "Teacher, we didn't ask for leave and we didn't even know about it, but the school gave us a 40-day leave. Shouldn't they give us an explanation? This treatment is really high. I want to ask, who else has the same treatment as our East Emperor Palace?" Ning Qianqing took a deep breath and asked straightforwardly. The middle-aged man's smile remained unchanged. He hesitated a little and continued to answer with a smile. "In fact, all the 50 people in your class have been approved except for Wang Yuetong, including the freshman who has just arrived and several freshmen who are about to enter the school. Your leave is the same, about 40 days. It's just that the treatment is slightly different." He looked at Li Badian and Ning Qianqing and said with a meaningful smile, "I can guarantee that your treatment is absolutely the best. Enjoy the next 40 days. Chapter 125. After getting out of the teaching building and getting on the school bus, Li Tianlan looked around and found that he had come to Zhuang Huayang's office again. The spring breeze was warm. The birds were singing and the flowers were fragrant. It seemed that only Zhuang Huayang's residence, a place with a bloody atmosphere like the Sky Academy, could be filled with flowers and fragrance all the year round. Obviously, Dongqing Qiuqi had chosen this place to meet. Li Tianlan, who had been silent all the way, looked at Tribulation's back and finally couldn't help asking, "Martial uncle, what's going on? Why did the headmaster approve my leave slip?" "It's not just you." Tribulation paused and let Li Tianlan walk side by side with him. He said slowly, "Guyulan, Li Badian, Ning Qianqing, Lu Dongyu, Sumai Fan Haoyu, these people must have gotten leave slips by now." What? Li Tianlan subconsciously felt a little creepy. These people mentioned by Tribulation were all the best in this year's Sky Academy. They might be in different realms, but none of their real combat capability was lower than the fire-flaming realm. So many people were inexplicably on leave at the same time. What on earth did the Sky Academy want to do? I can't say. Tribulation shook his head. I signed a confidentiality agreement. You'll know when the time comes. Li Tianlan nodded. Many top-secret actions of the special warfare system of Zhongzhou State had to be signed in advance, and only the planners and main participants of the action were qualified to sign it. It was a kind of status, but it was more of a responsibility. Since it was a top-secret action, those who signed the confidentiality agreement must keep their mouths shut. Once the news was leaked, everyone would be implicated and no one could escape. As the most hidden but also the sharpest sword of the country in times of peace, the special warfare system was often not bound by the law. But once all kinds of constraints were formed, it was often high pressure like this time. The headmaster is back? Li Tianlan asked softly. Yes. Tribulation nodded and said in a hoarse voice, he just came back this morning. Li Tianlan didn't say more, but he already knew in his heart that Zhuang Huayang made such an unreasonable decision as soon as he came back. It could only mean that Yuzhou was not as peaceful as it seemed these days, at least far more than the changes of several important positions in the Sky Academy. In this game, the Wang family of Beihai, the giant group, and Sai City all gained something. As for Samsara, the one who ignited this conflict, and the academic faction who led this trade, they obviously had their own demands. A lot of things were going on behind the scenes in an orderly manner. Today's incident might just be the first inkling, and a bigger storm was obviously still behind. Storm? Li Tianlan smiled inwardly. In the short time since he came to Huading, he had heard too many words such as the coming storm, and the troubled times. As time went by with the ups and downs of the general trend, the so-called storm finally came. One after another, they passed the unique flower beds and pools in the Sky Academy, entered the villa, and went straight to the headmaster's office. In the office, Zhuang Huayang, who had just returned to the Sky Academy, did not look tired at all. He was glowing and in high spirits. It seemed that both his spirit and mood were excellent. When Li Tianlan came in, Zhuang Huayang was bending over to water the only pot of devil's ivy in the office. A man and a woman were sitting on the sofa in the reception area. The woman was gentle and soft and the man was rough and bold. For Li Tianlan they were all acquaintances. Tianlan, here you are. Hearing the sound of the door opening, Zhuang Huayang greeted them with a smile. Then his eyes fell on the reception area and he said with a smile, General Thunder, Secretary Dongqing, the person you are waiting for is here. In the reception area, Thunder God, who was supposed to spend most of his time with Dongqing Wudi, stood up with a laugh and said in a heroic tone, Boy, come on, Qiu Qi and I have brought you a good thing this time. Li Tianlan was confused. He looked at Zhuang Huayang and Tribulation. Seeing that neither of them said anything, he walked to the reception area. The gentle Dongqing Qiu Qi nodded to Li Tianlan with a smile, and said in a calm and elegant tone, I came here suddenly. The old master asked me to bring you a good thing and I must give it to you in person, so I came to have a look. Li Tianlan did not ask what it was. He nodded and said solemnly, Thank the old master for me. Boy, you even need Qiu Qi to help you say thank you? You are so heartless. Don't you have the old master's phone number? How hard can it be to call him later and say thank you? The old master didn't say it out loud these days, but you don't know how much he wants you to call him. Thunder God took out a long silver box from his feet and put it on the table. He scolded with a smile, The old master told us in private that he doesn't expect much now. First, he hopes that you and Rushi can go home to see him together. Second, he hopes that you can get married early and give him a great-grandson in a few years. No matter how powerful the old man used to be, he will always be worried and miss the younger generation in the family when they are outside. Boy, you should call the old master when you have nothing to do. Even if you just say a few words, the old man will be happy. Dongqing Qiuqi looked at Li Tianlan subconsciously. She was very clear about the engagement between Li Tianlan and her sister, but she did not expect that Grandpa would attach so much importance to this promise made many years ago and Li Tianlan. The younger generation in the family. Listening to these words, she was afraid that in Grandpa's eyes, Li Tianlan was more than just his grandson-in-law. His status was even more important than her, his granddaughter. Li Tianlan touched his nose with a wry smile. These words sounded really weird. He could not refute, let alone answer, so he simply changed the topic. He pointed to the box in front of him and asked curiously, "What is this?" Click. Thunder God opened the mechanism of the box, turned the box to Li Tianlan, and said with a smile, "See for yourself." Li Tianlan squatted down casually and touched the box. Then he was stunned. He thought it was just an ordinary metal box, but it felt extremely strange when he touched it. It was neither gold nor wood, and seemed to be some special military material. Even a box was like this, which showed that the thing in the box was absolutely worthy of Thunder God's title of good stuff. He took a deep breath, opened the box and saw the thing in the box. His pupils contracted instantly. A silver heavy sniper rifle nearly 2 meters long was lying quietly in the box, with a deep and mysterious light. The stock, the scope, the muzzle. The silver heavy sniper rifle had smooth lines and a simple and unadorned design. But lying quietly in the box, it gave people a feeling of extreme coldness and violence. A row of bullets was neatly arranged under the box. The bullets were long and narrow, engraved with some simple patterns. There were about 20 bullets in total. Boy, pick it up and have a try. What do you think? Thunder God squinted at the silver sniper rifle in the box, and his eyes were equally hot. This? Li Tianlan hesitated. He did not know how precious this gun was, but he could instinctively sense that this gun was different. The kind of deep silver that was not dazzling, on the contrary, the bullets with complicated patterns, and the gun body that seemed to be natural and even had no artificial traces. All these showed that this gun was absolutely extraordinary. How could it be a good thing? It was simply a treasure. Li Tianlan wanted to refuse such a precious good thing, but looking at the sniper rifle in front of him, he really could not bear to give it up. Even if his shooting skills were not good now, this heavy sniper rifle was extremely attractive to him. If he did not want such a heavy sniper rifle, he would not be wronged even if he was struck by lightning. Li Tianlan struggled for a while, but finally he could not resist the temptation. He reached out and grabbed the heavy sniper rifle in the box. As soon as the sniper rifle was in his hand, Li Tianlan's palm suddenly sank. This large sniper rifle, nearly 2 meters long, was also unexpectedly heavy. Roughly estimating, it weighed at least 25 kilograms. Li Tianlan held the gun and looked at it silently. The more he looked, the more he loved it. The sense of security when holding the gun in his hand, the cold and violent momentum of the gun body, and everything about it were extremely attractive to him, as if it were tailor-made for him. This is the heavenly rainbow that Dongqing clan recently reported to the army ministry? It is said that when Samsara destroyed Night Spirit, Dongqing clan lent Samsara 10 heavenly rainbows. Is this it? Zhuang Huayang and Tribulation came over at the same time. Looking at the really powerful and violent heavy sniper rifle in Li Tianlan's hand, the old headmaster's eyes were filled with sincere admiration. No. Thunder God shook his head. Looking at Li Tianlan standing with a gun, he only felt that the two were an extraordinary match. The sharpness under Li Tianlan's calmness and the violence under the simplicity of the heavy sniper rifle complemented each other. He smiled and said calmly, "This is Sky Attack, which can be said to be a combination of Mad Shot and Heavenly Rainbow. It is the latest discovery of Dongqing clan, and the final experiment was completed a week ago. Although Sky Attack is not the only one, it can't be mass-produced. At present, the only Sky Attack in the entire Dongqing clan is in Tianlan's hand." This time, not to mention Zhuang Huayang and Dongqing Qiuqi, even the eyes of Tribulation changed slightly. The only Sky Attack in the Dongqing clan was given to Li Tianlan. This kind of affection was completely an attitude of being willing to do everything for him. Li Tianlan was also stunned. Looking at the heavy sniper rifle in his hand, which he liked from the bottom of his heart, he felt a little heavy for no reason. "General Lei, can you tell me the actual combat data of Sky Attack?" Zhuang Huayang hesitated and asked with a dignified look. Dongqing clan was known as a military giant. They had made great achievements in some large-scale military projects in Zhongzhou state, but they did not have much in-depth research in the field of firearms before. Dongqing clan focused on firearms about 15 years ago. Mad Shot came out 9 years ago and amazed the dark world. Recently, Heavenly Rainbow played a significant role in the destruction of the Night Spirit organization by Samsara. So how terrifying would the only Sky Attack be? The accurate range is 5,000 meters, and the maximum range can reach 5,500 meters. It is powerful and fast. Within 3,000 meters, even an expert of the thundershocking realm will be seriously injured in an instant if the Sky Attack is launched with all its strength. If it hits a vital part, it will definitely die. In this action, Tianlan has the Sky Attack in his hand, so there should not be too much danger. Within 3,000 meters, he could kill an expert of the thundershocking realm with one shot. Zhuang Huayang's face suddenly changed. What did 3,000 meters mean? This distance was not a distance that could be closed in an instant, even for an expert of the invincible realm. Within this distance, if a master who was proficient in sniping aimed at him, 3,000 meters was a natural moat that could determine life and death. A gun that could target an expert of the thunder-shocking realm. How many such heavy sniper rifles could there be in the whole dark world? In addition to the 12 murderous weapons, there were less than 5 kinds of firearms that could achieve such lethality in the dark world. And all of them could not be mass-produced. But the sky attack could not be mass-produced. What did this mean? The most important thing was that Dongqing Hongguang did not give the only sky attack to Dongqing Rushi, but gave it to Li Tianlan. The corner of Zhuang Huayang's mouth twitched, and he was extremely confused for a moment. Uncle Thunder, I can't. Li Tianlan's face also changed. He was rudely interrupted by Thunder God when he just said a few words. He stared at Li Tianlan with a pair of bull eyes and said in a rude tone, "What can't you do? We can't change what the old master has decided. This sky attack is yours and no one can take it away." He paused and continued, "Don't you have a vacation? I will also be in the Sky Academy during these 40 days. Tribulation is responsible for improving your combat capability, and I am responsible for improving your marksmanship. Boy, this is the real special training. You have to be mentally prepared." Li Tianlan tightly held the heavy sniper rifle in his hand, and his heart was filled with mixed feelings. "Call the old master for me." "No, I'll call him later." He was silent for a while and then he said in a low voice. Thunder God smiled meaningfully and said softly, "The old master has only one request for you." Li Tianlan nodded seriously and waited for Thunder God to continue. Thunder God glanced at him and continued, "After this special training, the Sky Academy and the Deep Sea Academy will have a top-secret operation. You have the Sky Attack. At that time the old master hopes that you can protect Rushi well and protect her. As a man you should protect your family. Boy, do you dare to make this promise?" Chapter 126. Holding the only sky attack of the Dongqing clan, Li Tianlan had no reason or position to refuse the promise that Thunder God asked him to make. But Thunder God's words were so annoying that it was obvious that he did it deliberately. Protecting his family, obviously in the eyes of the whole Dongqing clan, Dongqing Rushi, who had never met him, was already his wife, so he used the word family. In other words, whether it was to protect the country or to protect his comrades, Li Tianlan could agree without hesitation. But in the face of Thunder God's ambiguous words, Li Tianlan opened his mouth several times, but he couldn't give a clear answer. He kept the promise in his heart, held the sky attack in his hand and quietly changed the topic. The top-secret action of the two academies refers to, there was a flash of helplessness in Thunder God's eyes, but he didn't continue to embarrass him. During the year when Li Tianlan was in the desert he had always been with Li Tianlan, sent him there and sent him back. The two had been together for a long time, and Thunder God also had a deep understanding of Li Tianlan's character. Not to mention the importance of the sky attack in front of him, which could shoot an expert of the thunder-shocking realm. Even if there was nothing, if Dongqing Rushi was in danger, Li Tianlan would not stand idly by just because of the word Dongqing. As for asking him to admit Dongqing Rushi's identity, it was impossible for a while. He didn't get an answer from the simple test, so he didn't say more. He just turned his eyes to Zhuang Huayang and said, "You have to ask the headmaster about this. I only know it's a top-secret action, but I don't know about the action itself." Li Tianlan looked at Zhuang Huayang. Zhuang Huayang shook his head without surprise and said blandly, "This action is very secretive. Even if a little information is leaked, the consequences will be unimaginable, so we signed a confidentiality agreement. Not everyone in the decision-making committee knows the specific action, not to mention the Sky Academy. I can't tell you anything now. When the time comes you will naturally know." Li Tianlan's eyes narrowed. The action was not completely transparent in the decision-making committee, so it could be imagined how top-secret it was. It was just an action of two special warfare students. Was it really necessary for the big shots to be so cautious? Or could it be that there were some other inside stories? "Don't think too much." Zhuang Huayang looked at Li Tianlan and said in a calm tone, "The most important task for you now is to improve your strength. After 40 days of devilish special training, improve as much as you can. Tianlan, let me remind you that if you want to widen the gap between you and the others in credits, this is the best opportunity. Every student who participates in this action will have 100 credits, and those who perform well in the action will be rewarded with additional credits. There is no cap, so use these 40 days to improve your credits as soon as possible. This is the most important thing." Li Tianlan nodded. He slowly put the sky attack back into the box and carried it on his back. The sky attack was extremely heavy. Including the box, it weighed about 70 to 80 kilograms. Only a freak like Li Tianlan, who kept a human emperor weighing more than 50 kilograms in his sleeve all day long, could treat it as nothing. If it were someone else, this weight would probably be a big burden for most experts below the thundershocking realm. My classmates? He carried the sky attack on his back and continued to ask. They have someone to guide them to complete the special training. The Enchantress by Yuming Gu Yunxia Qing Ku, all of them will not be idle. But compared with you who have 2 mentors to guide them, their lives will definitely be better. Zhuang Huayang said indifferently, you have a day off today. Report here at this time tomorrow. Adjust your state. The special training will start tomorrow. In the next 40 days, I'm afraid you won't be able to relax. Put aside your plans for today. Tribulation stood beside Zhuang Huayang and said, everything should be done in moderation. Today is a relaxation. Okay. Li Tianlan smiled, but his thoughts were getting more and more out of control. This inexplicable 40-day vacation was called a vacation, but in fact, it was a special training with a more intense pace. Obviously, there was still a big gap between their strength and the upcoming action. That was why the academy had mobilized masters to concentrate special training on the most outstanding freshmen, in an attempt to maximize their combat capability in the shortest time possible. What was the top-secret action? Li Tianlan carried the sky attack on his back and walked out of the villa silently, thinking about this question all the way. The afternoon sun shone quietly on the academy's road, bright and fresh. Li Tianlan walked along the road unconsciously, but his mind had already flown to other places. A phone suddenly rang. Li Tianlan, who was absent-minded, suddenly came to his senses. He took out his mobile phone and looked at the number. His eyes narrowed subconsciously. He picked up the phone and said hello in an indifferent tone. Young Master Li, I'm at the Sky Academy. On the phone, Lu Shiyuan's respectful voice came through the phone, sounding extremely humble. I know. Li Tianlan smiled and said in a calm voice, which made it impossible to guess his inner thoughts. Congratulations, Deputy Director Lu. Is there anything you need me to do, young Master Li? Lu Shiyuan thought for a moment and asked straightforwardly. He couldn't guess Li Tianlan's thoughts, so he simply didn't bother to guess. This phone call was not to express loyalty. Given the actual relationship between them, Li Tianlan would only believe that the Lu family would be loyal to Li Tianlan if he was stupid. Moreover, it was not loyalty that maintained their subordination relationship. The fate of the Lu family was in his hands. No matter how much hatred and unwillingness the Lu family had in their hearts, as long as they wanted to survive, they had to accept the fate of being manipulated by Li Tianlan. Both sides were well aware of this. Li Tianlan's heart skipped a beat. He said thoughtfully, have you received any news or rumors about this top-secret action of the Sky Academy? No. Lu Shiyuan said honestly, it seems that even Gu Yunxia doesn't know much about this matter, and there was no rumor circulating in Huading beforehand. Young Master Li, should I inquire about it? Li Tianlan thought about it seriously, but finally shook his head and said, no need in case there are more complications. He had been selected for the top-secret action of the Sky Academy and the Deep Sea Academy, so there was no room for refusal. In the Sky Academy, which had a strong military atmosphere, this was equivalent to an order from above. Military orders were like mountains, and personal advance and retreat were not worth mentioning under military orders. Therefore, Li Tianlan would know about this matter sooner or later. If he let Lu Shiyuan inquire about it, it would be bad if there were any changes, not to mention whether he could find out anything. The Lu family was the most hidden chess piece in his hand at present. If it was exposed, it would do him no good. Okay. Lu Shiyuan simply responded. How could he really want to find out the inside story of this top-secret action? However, since Li Tianlan asked about it, he should express an attitude no matter what. From the bottom of his heart, Lu Shiyuan hoped that Li Tianlan would order the Lu family to do as little as possible. Because from his point of view, once the Lu family carried out the order given to the Lu family, it would certainly go against its own surface position. How dangerous it was and how careful it needed to be was impossible for those who were not involved to understand. Anything else? Li Tianlan continued to ask, holding the phone. Here's the thing. On the phone, Lu Shiyuan hesitated for a moment and reported in full detail, Young Master Li, a large number of elites of Jiangnan society have left Jiangnan. Their leader, Lu Shuanghua, is still in Huading and has no intention of leaving. I think they probably want to increase their investment in Huading. What should we do? Jiangnan society. This was the largest intelligence agency in southern Zhongzhou state, and Lu Shuanghua was one of the intelligence giants in Zhongzhou state. Perhaps in Huading, the power of Jiangnan society was not as powerful as that of the curtain. But in the entire southern Zhongzhou state, the curtain could not compare with Jiangnan society in terms of scale and various hidden channels. Lu Shuanghua, the current leader of Jiangnan society, used to be a senior intelligence officer of the Prince Group. For various reasons, he broke with the Prince Group and joined the Wang family of Beihai for self-protection under the guidance of Great Master Wu Wei. In a few years, he built Jiangnan society into the largest intelligence organization in southern Zhongzhou state. How could ordinary people compare with such skills? Lu Shuanghua personally led the army and increased Jiangnan society's intelligence investment in Huading. The first to be hit was definitely the curtain, the largest local intelligence organization in Huading. This was the real first to bear the brunt. Faced with the pressure from Jiangnan society, how should the curtain deal with it? This was the purpose of Lu Shiyuan's call. The news that Wang Yuetong, the little princess of the Wang family of Beihai, had lived with Li Tianlan had spread throughout the Sky Academy. Lu Shiyuan wanted to know Li Tianlan's position in the face of the intelligence agency of the Wang family of Beihai. Do you need to ask me about this? Li Tianlan frowned. If I were not here, how would you deal with Jiangnan society? Lu Shiyuan was silent for a while. He seemed to understand what Li Tianlan meant, but he still did not dare to make a decision without hearing Li Tianlan's clear statement. He took a deep breath and cautiously said, if it were before, the curtain would definitely try its best to obstruct the development of Jiangnan society in Huading, even at the cost of waging war in secret. From the standpoint of the Lu family, this was the most appropriate thing for them to do. Even if they did not do it, Kunlun City would probably give them hints in this regard. But from the standpoint of Li Tianlan, who knew if he would have any other views? Lu Shiyuan held the phone and waited silently. Li Tianlan was silent for about a minute, and then hung up the phone without saying a word. Most of the time, silence was often the best answer. Lu Shiyuan's scalp went numb. During that nearly minute of silence, Li Tianlan's breathing was steady. He could not hear the slightest hesitation in his voice, only an almost unfathomable calmness. Was he an ambitious man? Lu Shiyuan smiled bitterly, picked up the phone again and began to call the curtain. Almost as soon as Li Tianlan hung up the phone with Lu Shiyuan, his cell phone rang again. Looking at Wang Yuetong's phone on the screen, Li Tianlan smiled and picked up the phone again. Senior brother, where are you? Wang Yuetong's clear voice came from the microphone, and she did not sound unhappy. I'm on my way back to the dormitory. Where are you? Li Tianlan lit a cigarette and asked, are you angry that the academy did not let you participate in this matter? No. Wang Yuetong paused and her voice became low. She whispered, it's not the academy's idea. It should be my family's idea. This operation is mysterious and it may be dangerous. His Majesty the Sword Emperor still loves you very much. This is to protect you. Li Tianlan said with a casual smile without thinking too much. This is not protection. On the phone, Wang Yuetong said softly, and then became silent again as if she wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. Li Tianlan waited quietly. It was obvious that Wang Yuetong called to say something to him, but she did not know how to say it. Did I finally embarrass her? Li Tianlan sighed in his heart, but he did not show it on the surface. My brother. Wang Yuetong hesitated for a long time and then said softly, my brother and several other young people from the Wang family of Beihai will also participate in this operation. In addition, Gu Hongguang, the young master of Kunlun City, is said to have left Kunlun City. Senior brother, be careful on this trip. She paused and then said in a serious tone, be careful. The hair all over Li Tianlan's body stood up slightly and he was silent. Wang Yuetong said be careful twice in a row. Perhaps only she knew who she was talking about. Wang Xingxiao. Gu Hongguang. These two people, who always had a high status in the younger generation and were known as the Young Heavenly Sons, would also participate in this operation. What did this mean? And the most thought-provoking thing was that when the Sword Emperor of Zhongzhou State let his son participate in the operation, he excluded his daughter. What did this mean? The Sky Academy already knew that Wang Yuetong was living with him, and so did Wang Xiaoyao. How could Wang Tianzong not know? Excluding Wang Yuetong from the operation was not to protect her. Then he thought of Wang Yuetong's words of be careful. Li Tianlan smiled and his eyes were deep. He was not the only one who did not want to embarrass Wang Yuetong. The Wang family of Beihai did not want to either. Vaguely, he seemed to understand the deep meaning of Wang Yuetong's deliberate exclusion in this operation. "It's okay," Li Tianlan said softly, and his eyes became calmer. On the phone, Wang Yuetong answered obediently and continued, "I heard that after this operation the top 10 experts of the young generation will be re-ranked. Come on, senior brother." Li Tianlan took a deep drag on the cigarette and did not speak. The top-secret operation of the Sky Academy and the Deep Sea Academy, plus Wang Xingxiao and Gu Hongguang, the top 10 experts of the young generation were almost all gathered this time. Would this top-secret operation be the beginning of the official killing and struggle of the young generation of Zhongzhou State? Zhongzhou State produced a heavenly sun every 500 years. The beginning of the competition of the heavenly suns. Li Tianlan's eyes gradually showed a glimmer of light, and he chuckled and said, "Wait for me to come back." Wang Yuetong also smiled and said softly, "I've already left the Sky Academy and I'm the only one in the class, so I'm on leave. I just called Senior Yu. I'll wait for you in the East Emperor Palace. Wait for my man to amaze the world." She paused and whispered with a smile, "Senior brother, if you do well, I'll reward you." Li Tianlan's heart was boiling for no reason, and he asked directly, "What reward?" Wang Yuetong chuckled. Through the phone, Li Tianlan seemed to be able to imagine the little princess's pretty face blushing and biting her lips. "If you do well, I'll let you play with your sister-in-law. Do you like this reward, brother-in-law?" Chapter 127. Updated late. This chapter is yesterday's, and there are 2 chapters to be released before 12 o'clock today. Before the storm, silence filled the sky. Whether it was the Sky Academy, the Deep Sea Academy, or Zhongzhou State, they all suddenly became calm. The friction between the Big Six seemed to have completely ceased, and everything became calm and tranquil. Li Tianlan's Devil Special training began in a calm atmosphere, without any buffer and gradual progress. Thunder God was responsible for improving his marksmanship, while Tribulation was responsible for improving his combat strength. From the very beginning, the almost crazy training intensity had tightened Li Tianlan's body to the limit. 15 hours of training a day, 5 hours to practice marksmanship, 2 hours to practice driving, and the rest of the time, Li Tianlan's task was to follow Tribulation to practice the Buddhist incantation of 9 words. 1 hour to eat every day. 3 hours to meditate. 2 hours to rest. The remaining 3 hours were for actual combat. There were no rules in the actual combat. Tribulation, who suppressed his strength to the chi-controlling realm, Thunder God, who suppressed his strength to the ice-condensing realm, and the 3 fought together. Li Tianlan had almost no time to be idle 24 hours a day. Practicing marksmanship, practicing the Buddhist incantation of 9 words, meditating, fighting, and fighting. Zhuang Huayang personally drew a remote training ground for the 3 of them, and a few single beds were placed in the warehouse of the training ground as resting places. Most of the time, Li Tianlan kept repeating the boring but substantial training. By the time the first week passed, Li Tianlan, who was proficient in all kinds of firearms, could hit the target with every shot. At the same time, he drove the car to the limit. His realm at the peak of the chi-controlling realm became more and more stable. The second week, Li Tianlan could already drive the car at the fastest speed to bypass the obstacles specially set by Thunder God and reach the finish line within the specified time. At the same time, he began to practice the sniper rifle. In the third week, the vehicle training was removed, and the daily rest time was changed from 2 hours to 1 hour. The extra 2 hours were all added to the actual combat training. Li Tianlan officially practiced the sky attack in the 4th week. Li Tianlan used ordinary bullets for the 2 shots of the sky attack, but he still successfully broke the moving target 2 kilometers away. In the actual combat training that day, Li Tianlan was knocked out by Tribulation, who was also in the chi-controlling realm. Then he woke up with cold water and continued to train. Li Tianlan finally realized the horror of the sky attack, the treasure of the Dongqing clan. He originally thought that the sky attack was just like other sniper rifles, but when he really shot it, he realized that if he didn't have the wind and thunder veins, he wouldn't even be able to pull the trigger when he was in the chi-controlling realm. This kind of heavy sniper rifle could kill an expert of the thunder-shocking realm with 1 shot. The internal design of the sky attack was exquisite and complicated. It was different from the design ideas of any other gun. It could be said that the pursuit of lethality and destructive power had reached the real extreme. In particular, the design of the internal firing pin was not made of high-temperature resistant and super-hard tungsten steel, but of a special material discovered by the Dongqing clan in recent years. This was also one of the key reasons why pulling the sky attack required a great deal of strength and raised the power of the gun to such a level. With Li Tianlan's current physical strength, firing 5 shots in a row was enough to exhaust his physical strength. If he didn't have the thunder veins, he couldn't pull the trigger even if he had a sky attack under the fire-flaming realm. So from the 4th week, Li Tianlan fought with Tribulation or Thunder God in a weak state every time. He became quieter and quieter, but his attacks became fiercer and fiercer. Tribulation could suppress Li Tianlan by suppressing his strength to the chi-controlling realm, but he felt more and more pressure. Thunder God, who was originally an expert at the peak of the thunder-shocking realm, became a little frightened in the actual combat. From the 4th week he no longer suppressed his strength to the ice-condensing realm, but raised it to the fire-flaming realm. Li Tianlan didn't express any opinion. He just attacked wildly, blindly. His attacks became more and more crazy, and his every move was full of killing intent and sword intent, incisively and vividly. After a week of crazy, sleepless special training, Li Tianlan was transforming almost every day, becoming sharper and sharper. Now he looked like a young Tribulation, but his every move was more magnificent than Tribulation's. The sword intent hidden deep in his heart was being developed little by little, like a famous sword that had been dusty for a long time but still had world-shaking sharpness. It was being unsheathed little by little and was about to shine in the world. Continuous actual combat, non-stop fighting. Li Tianlan vaguely seemed to have a tendency to break through the peak of the chi-controlling realm and go straight to the fulfillment. His strength was getting stronger and stronger. In the continuous training day after day, his potential was uncontrollably squeezed. In just a month, his whole spirit was completely soaring, and every move he made had a kind of unparalleled momentum. More than half of the 4th week had passed. When Thunder God finally realized that the strength of the stabilization phase of the fire-flaming realm was not enough to suppress Li Tianlan, he directly raised his strength to the peak of the fire-flaming realm without hesitation. Once again Li Tianlan was knocked out. "Can you still do it?" Tribulation, who looked colder than anyone else, finally opened his mouth. There was a trace of imperceptible worry in his low and hoarse voice. He could be indifferent to anyone, but in the whole world, there were only 2 people that Tribulation cared about most. One was his sister, Situ Tsangyue, and the other was Li Tianlan. After a month of special training, how could he not see Li Tianlan's current state? Whether it was spirit or body, Li Tianlan had now completely reached the limit. If he continued, he might go further, but it might also damage his foundation. At this critical step, even Tribulation hesitated. During this month, Li Tianlan's spirit was almost always in a state of tension, and his body was constantly training under high pressure. Almost every day his physical strength would be completely exhausted, and then he would use a few hours of meditation and sleep to recover. Whether he could fully recover or not, he would continue to train the next day. During this month, Tribulation did not hear a word of complaint from Li Tianlan, nor did he see the slightest frustration or retreat. His face and eyes had always been calm. The determination and ruthlessness behind that calmness even moved Tribulation a little. In life it was nothing to be cruel to others, but to be cruel to oneself was the real cruel. The only feeling that Li Tianlan gave Tribulation now was that he was desperate. He could ignore his body and even his soul. As long as he could become stronger, he was willing to pay any price. He must do it. On the empty training ground, Thunder God looked at Li Tianlan, who was in a coma in front of him. His eyes were soft, but his tone was calm and firm. It's nothing to him. He could survive such a desperate environment. Now it's just a little more bitter and tired. Compared with the past, it's not worth mentioning at all. The past? Tribulation moved his body, and his eyes behind the silver mask fell on Thunder God with some doubts. Thunder God hesitated slightly. In his sight, Li Tianlan, who was in a coma on the ground, closed his eyes and looked relaxed and peaceful. Thunder God hesitated for a moment and finally turned around and came to Tribulation. "Have you ever experienced real despair?" Thunder God handed Tribulation a cigarette and asked seriously. Tribulation's pupils contracted slightly. This sentence was ordinary, but in Tribulation's ears, it gave him a cold feeling. Tribulation took the cigarette but did not light it. He remained silent. "Tianlan has experienced it." Thunder God pointed at Li Tianlan and said softly, "This boy once entered the thunder-shocking realm and chose to recultivate. You know this, don't you?" Tribulation nodded and said thoughtfully, "The desert." "Yes, the desert." Thunder God nodded, took a deep drag on the cigarette and said with a smile, "He could come out of the desert alive that year, so there is nothing that he can't bear." Tribulation didn't understand. After a moment of silence he said softly, "The despair you mentioned, do you mean recultivate?" "No." Thunder God took a deep breath. After a long silence he said softly, "It's real despair. Few people know about this. I can be regarded as a witness. I went to the border and brought him to the desert, and watched him get the heavenly king heart hidden deep in the desert." Tribulation remained silent, waiting for Thunder God to continue. "The prison in the desert is known as one of the most complicated labyrinths in the dark world. You should know that, right?" Thunder God suddenly asked. Tribulation nodded and said nothing. "In fact, under the prison, there is a passage with the same internal structure as the labyrinth on the ground. Every intersection is exactly the same." Thunder God said flatly, "It's just that the space of the underground labyrinth is a little smaller." Tribulation's eyes suddenly condensed, and he directly turned around and asked, "How small?" "Very small." Thunder God said calmly, "The space is less than half a meter up, down, left and right. It's hot and humid inside. If a person climbs in, he can barely lie on the ground. Not to mention standing up, even if he slightly props up his arms, his back may be squeezed above. Can you imagine such a space?" Tribulation's breathing became faster for no reason. "That underground passage is the heavenly king heart in the desert." Thunder God's tone became calmer and calmer. "You can't imagine it, neither can I. In that passage you can only keep crawling in one posture. You can only move forward, not backward, or even change your posture. There is no sound, no light, no space, no food and water in the passage. You can only hear your own breathing and heartbeat. The whole world seems to be constantly squeezing you in the darkness. All you can do is crawl forward, and you must stay extremely calm because that passage is a labyrinth. If you take a wrong step, you may be completely lost in the dark. Being lost means death. In that kind of environment, let alone ordinary people, even if we go in, how long can we persist? Absolute depression, absolute darkness, that is real despair. I don't know about you, but I think if I were to go in, I wouldn't even be able to hold on for half a day before going completely crazy. The darkness and oppression aren't scary, but the demons in one's heart are the most terrifying. And Tianlan has experienced all that I said. It was in the passage where he could only keep one posture, in the passage where there was only darkness and depression. He went in from the entrance and came out from the exit for 3 days. He didn't die or go crazy. After experiencing real despair, Tianlan can be said to have cut off all the inner demons. How many experts of the invincible realm can achieve this kind of absolute concentration and condensed willpower, not to mention those in the thundershocking realm? This is Tianlan's heavenly king heart. It may not have other effects as the real heavenly king heart, but in terms of willpower, it is even better. I dare not say anything else, but I am sure that Tianlan is absolutely indestructible in terms of willpower. A drop of sweat flowed down Tribulation's temple. He stood there motionless. Thunder God's words sounded like nothing, but if you really put yourself in that kind of environment, that kind of despair was enough to drive anyone completely crazy. Chapter 128. The special training was still going on. Li Tianlan didn't say stop, so Tribulation and Thunder God didn't either. Their requirements were getting stricter and stricter. In actual combat, they even began to work together to target Li Tianlan at the same time. Tribulation mainly attacked. Thunder God assisted. One was a cold and treacherous super assassin. The other was a valiant general of Zhongzhou state. Li Tianlan was knocked unconscious countless times and got up again and again. In the last few days, the three of them even had more than 8 hours of actual combat every day. Even Tribulation and Thunder God couldn't bear the intensity of such a fierce battle, but Li Tianlan was always in high spirits. His momentum was getting crazier and crazier, and the almost violent sharpness kept flying between his eyes. In this state, Li Tianlan's every move was indescribably dangerous and dazzling. Was it bitter? Not at all. It was more bitter than when he ate stinky porridge at the border and covered himself with a damp and moldy quilt during the rainy season. It was more bitter than when he stood in front of nearly 1,000 tombstones behind the border camp and faced countless elites of the Li family who didn't have a good end. It was also more bitter than when he got along with the veterans at the border who were willing to stay with their grandfather without complaint or regret even though there was no hope. That was the real bitterness which made people desperate and numb. Thunder God asked Tribulation if he had ever experienced real despair. In fact, for Li Tianlan, he was not really desperate in the dark and depressing maze under the desert. It was just an obstacle that he had to conquer in his life. After he cut off all the inner demons, he would get what he wanted. His life at the border from childhood to adulthood was the real despair with no future. Now that he was in the Sky Academy, he had a group of good teachers and helpful friends, East Emperor Palace, and the most beautiful woman. He could see with his own eyes the magnificence of the flourishing age of Zhongzhou State, and he could see with his own eyes the slow germination of something called hope. Bitter? What right did he have to say bitter? Everything he had experienced was meaningful. It was worth it. What was so bitter about it? Time entered June unhurriedly. The weather gradually became hot. Under the scorching sun, when Thunder God, who had suppressed his strength to the peak of the fire-flaming realm, was once again dazed by Li Tianlan's shadow, this fierce general next to Dongqing Wudi finally laughed and scolded in exasperation. "Stop fighting, damn it. What's the point of fighting? We can't even touch him. It's boring." He turned to look at Tribulation, who was watching the battle silently, and suddenly said, "Do you want to teach your disciple a lesson? How much of your teachings does his current shadow have?" Tribulation did not move, but a smile flashed in his eyes. He said calmly, "I was just like this when I was in the chi-controlling realm." Thunder God shook his head and lamented, "The exquisite bone, huh? This thing's comprehension ability is truly abnormal. The key is that you're not an assassin yet. You're more inclined towards the offensive path. With these two abnormal shadows, there's no way to play." What he said was half true but not exaggerated. With Thunder God's strength, even if he suppressed his strength to the peak of the fire-flaming realm, once he fought, he would still have the fighting style and experience of the peak of the thunder-shocking realm. If he went all out, it would not be a big problem to deal with the current Li Tianlan. But the actual combat was different from a life-and-death fight. In the absence of some special means, Li Tianlan could move between the two shadows so flexibly that even Thunder God had a headache dealing with him. Especially 2 days ago, when Li Tianlan's two shadows could perfectly imitate his movements, Thunder God's feeling became more and more obvious. It was not that he could not beat Li Tianlan, but he felt aggrieved. "Well then, don't fight." Li Tianlan smiled, took out a cigarette and handed it to Thunder God. Both Tribulation and Thunder God were stunned and looked at Li Tianlan at the same time. Li Tianlan's tone was calm and he whispered, "It's almost time. I want to try to break through." "Enter the ice-condensing realm?" Thunder God looked incredulous. In 40 days he entered the ice-condensing realm from the peak of the chi-controlling realm. This kind of speed made people speechless. "No, it's the fulfillment of the chi-controlling realm." Li Tianlan shook his head. After more than 40 days of crazy training, his realm had been advancing, but it was not obvious. Now his feet were almost completely out of the peak of the chi-controlling realm, only half a step away from the fulfillment of the chi-controlling realm. In the next few days he needed to adjust his state and make this step completely. His vacation was coming to an end. In the next few days, if he could not break through, no matter how much actual combat he practiced, the effect would not be great. "Then go and have a try." Tribulation nodded calmly and pointed to the direction of the warehouse on the training ground. Li Tianlan nodded and entered the warehouse with the heavy sky attack on his back. Without any delay, he directly sat down and began to meditate. After more than 30 days of crazy training and actual combat, Tribulation and Thunder God attacked his weaknesses again and again. Li Tianlan might not even know how much he had gained. If he could successfully break through this meditation, he might be able to fight more actively against Thunder God, who suppressed his strength to the peak of the fire-flaming realm. Li Tianlan thought silently. Countless details of the past month flowed in his mind one by one. The 24 moves of sword from Zhuanyuantai of Kunlun, the Invincible Manual, the Buddhist incantation of 9 words. His spirit was completely focused. His mind was clear and all kinds of pictures appeared more and more clearly. The almost crazy sword intent and killing intent surrounded his whole body. In the warehouse, the cold killing intent filled every corner in an instant. Li Tianlan became quieter. Time went by. His aura was getting stronger and stronger, but the sword intent and killing intent had completely disappeared. Only a strong momentum reverberated in the warehouse, surging endlessly. 2 hours. 3 hours. 5 hours. Li Tianlan's momentum had been rising slowly but firmly without interruption. Thunder God and Tribulation came and went, standing outside the door, quietly guarding the warehouse. 6 hours. Li Tianlan's rising momentum finally stopped when it reached a certain peak. He took a deep breath, frowned slightly and opened his eyes. Before he had time to sort out what he had gained from this meditation, a sigh had sounded in front of him. Li Tianlan raised his head abruptly. In his sight, a middle-aged figure with a kind of carefree and unrestrained aura was standing quietly in front of him. He was smiling, but his eyes were extremely complicated. The middle-aged man in a white suit was about 50 years old, looking clean and elegant. He was standing in front of Li Tianlan, but in Li Tianlan's perception he seemed not to exist, ethereal and illusory. Li Tianlan's pupils suddenly contracted. The man was standing in front of him, but before he opened his eyes he didn't notice his existence at all. How did he come? How long did he stay here? Li Tianlan's heart shook violently and then he calmed down. He looked calmly at the middle-aged man who suddenly appeared in front of him and said in a calm tone, "You are?" The middle-aged man didn't seem surprised by Li Tianlan's calm performance, or maybe he didn't care about it at all. He just looked at Li Tianlan seriously, his eyes in a trance, and his smile was a little bitter. "According to seniority, you should call me third uncle." Li Tianlan didn't speak, but his eyes gradually became as sharp as a sword. The middle-aged man continued to explain, "Wang Tianzong is the eldest, your father is the second, and I'm the third." He paused, laughed at himself and said in a trance, "Now, I don't know if my eldest brother will recognize me, or if my second brother will recognize me. As for me, Tianlan, will you recognize me? Who are you?" Li Tianlan's expression didn't change at all. His breath was slowly converging and he became deep and silent. "I'm Lin Fengting." The middle-aged man looked at Li Tianlan softly and said softly, "Tianlan, I have a deep relationship with the Li family or Zhuanyuantai. A peerless expert who could sneak into the warehouse without being noticed by tribulation outside. His surname was Lin and he had a deep relationship with Zhuanyuantai." Li Tianlan's mind flashed, and he thought of a name that had long disappeared in the long river of history. His face also became solemn. "Descendants of my ancestors? My ancestors did establish Zhuanyuantai. 400s of years, although the Lin family is no longer in Zhongzhou state, they have connections with the Wang family of Beihai and the successor of Zhuanyuantai, the Li family. In my generation when I was in the Wang family of Beihai, Wang Tianzong, your father, and I became sworn brothers in the peach garden of Mount Dibing. It was I who proposed it." Lin Fengting, who suddenly appeared in front of Li Tianlan, had a more complicated look in his eyes. "Sworn brothers in the peach garden?" Li Tianlan hid all his inner thoughts and said with a smile. However, Lin Fengting's appearance was too sudden, so even if he tried to hide it, there was still an imperceptible sarcasm in his tone. This hint of sarcasm was like a needle pricking Lin Fengting's heart, and directly made his smile become forced. "Are you blaming your father for being blind to become sworn brothers with us?" "In this situation, I don't blame anyone." Li Tianlan shook his head expressionlessly, looked at Lin Fengting and said calmly, "Senior, are you here today to talk about the old days? Zhuanyuantai has disappeared, so it seems meaningless to talk about the old days." Lin Fengting took a deep look at Li Tianlan. The corner of his mouth moved slightly and he said with some difficulty, "When the great change happened, I wasn't in Zhongzhou state. When I heard the news and rushed back, everything had happened, Senior." Li Tianlan said calmly, "When the Lin family handed Zhuanyuantai to the Li family, you actually had nothing to do with Zhuanyuantai, so you don't need to explain anything and I don't need to understand anything. Zhuanyuantai belongs to the Li family and I'm in this generation. As long as I'm alive, one day I'll take back everything that the Li family lost. I won't blame you, Senior. I'm not qualified or in a position to do so. I once had a teacher who told me that as long as you have a clear conscience, that's enough." A clear conscience? Lin Fengting's eyes were bleak. If he really had a clear conscience, why did he show up here today? "These years, it's been hard, hasn't it?" Lin Fengting asked in a hoarse voice, and his face seemed a little haggard. Li Tianlan glanced at him, grinned and said, "Unspeakably hard. Over the years, how many members of the Li family died with grievances? How many gnashed their teeth? How much resentment and unwillingness? How much despair and numbness? From the extreme glory to the downfall, how could words describe the bitterness of the Li family over the years? Everything will be fine. We'll be better soon." Li Tianlan said softly with a firm expression. Lin Fengting sighed softly, reached into his arms, and handed a yellowed ancient book to Li Tianlan. "I won't help you take revenge." Lin Fengting said softly, "I may never be as good as you at this point, The Lin family has long lost the drive of our ancestors, and we don't need to stand aloof from the world. Now we all enjoy this feeling. So the Lin family won't help you reappear Zhuanyuantai. He paused and continued, but there are some things that the Lin family owed the Li family back then. When it's time to pay it back, we'll pay it back. Li Tianlan took the ancient book calmly, but he didn't open it. He just kept silent. When the Lin family left Zhongzhou State and left most of the things in Zhuanyuantai to the Li family, they also took 2 things with them. Lin Fengting said slowly, one is the ancestor's sword, and the other is this half-style sword manual. Half-style. Li Tianlan frowned slightly. Half-style. Lin Fengting nodded. The last move of the 24 moves of sword is called Break of Reincarnation, which is the half-style in front of you. This move is incomplete. But for hundreds of years, no one in the Li family has ever practiced the invincible manual, so no one has ever found this sword move that belongs to the invincible manual. Now I give you this half-style. As for whether you can complete it or not, it's up to you. The 24 moves of sword Break of Reincarnation. Li Tianlan's heart was in turmoil. After a long time he asked softly, why is it a half-style? He had no doubt about the ancestor's talent. How could the only person who could stand shoulder to shoulder with the heavenly sun in 500 years and establish Zhuanyuantai not complete the half-style sword manual? However, that ancestor had left behind half a sword manual in the end. Why was that so? Maybe for the ancestor the half-style sword manual is the best. Lin Fengting smiled. The unique skill of the Wang family of Beihai is unparalleled in the world. Their strongest sword move is called 6 Paths of Reincarnation. 6 Paths of Reincarnation. Break of Reincarnation. Half-style sword manual. Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes thoughtfully. Was the 24 moves of sword a sword move specially aimed at 6 Paths of Reincarnation? The half-style was the sword manual, and the other half was the affection. The meaning behind this half move was really profound. Thank you. Holding the sword manual, Li Tianlan took a deep look at Lin Fengting and said, if you want, you can give this half-style sword manual to Tribulation for reference. Maybe it will help him break through to the invincible realm. Lin Fengting looked at Li Tianlan and inadvertently revealed some secrets. He said, the dark world will change greatly and it will even change the current situation. Tianlan, do you need me to do anything for you? You just said you wouldn't help me. Li Tianlan shook his head with the sword manual in his hand. I won't help you get revenge. But I feel guilty about what happened back then. I owe my second brother and the Li family a sword move. I'd better pay it back to you. Lin Fengting said with a smile. Li Tianlan was silent. Lin Fengting narrowed his eyes and continued, after the top 5 on the divine list, I can kill them with 1 sword move. This sword move was so heavy that even if Li Tianlan was deep in thought, he couldn't help but change his expression. Lin Fengting took out a note with a phone number on it and handed it to Li Tianlan. He chuckled and said, this is my contact information. I've used it for more than 20 years. When you need this sword move you can call me at any time. Remember there is only 1 sword move. He patted Li Tianlan on the shoulder, and his figure gradually became faint and finally disappeared completely. Li Tianlan stood there for half an hour before he took the sky attack and walked out of the warehouse in silence. In the hot and dry air, the scorching sun rose and the sky was clear. Li Tianlan's heart became more and more depressed. All kinds of emotions piled up in his heart and almost overwhelmed him. The half-style 24 moves of sword was affection. Lin Fengting's sword move was also affection. But what did this seemingly deep affection and righteousness represent? Li Tianlan gritted his teeth and trembled all over. There seemed to be thousands of sword intents occupying his soul in his chest, and he couldn't wait to vent them. Li Tianlan suddenly raised the sky attack in his hand. The silver body of the gun was facing the sky, overflowing with light. Li Tianlan's fingers pulled the trigger with all his strength. Bang! The violent gunshot echoed in the sky. Under the huge impact, Li Tianlan suddenly raised his head and let out a long roar. A large amount of air surged and gathered around him crazily. The gunshot kept ringing, but Li Tianlan was still pulling the trigger, letting his physical strength be consumed crazily. His frivolous and presumptuous roar went straight to the sky, with endless resentment and madness that almost released the whole soul, surging endlessly in the entire training ground. There was an infinite amount of sword intents breaking out around him. In the echoing gunshot and roar, Li Tianlan's physical strength was exhausted, and his sword intents were scattered. A large amount of air whistled and shook. After the gunshot and roar, a young and clear voice rang out. It was a simple only 1 word. Stop. The whistling air suddenly paused and then instantly exploded. The wind whistled and it was as cold as a knife. A word moved the world. Tribulation's eyes lit up. It was not the light of satisfaction, but a real surprise. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.